Okay. Come around, I can't see you. Tell her to move around. You move around. I can't. Your wife, I can't see her. I want to see you. Move around, darling. Yeah, move around. That's better. Get another chair so I can see you. Just as nice to see you when I'm talking, that's all. You're looking at a wall. That's better. That's it. Good. Welcome. Okay. So let's just think, we're sitting here listening to what Buddha says about life, happiness, suffering, the causes of it. So think, listen to it carefully, think about it, see if there's something useful for our own life so that we can be of benefit to others, thinking that this is the reason we're sitting here. To listen to this, to take away some tools that we can use to develop our own qualities so we can be of benefit to others, so we can help others in an effective way. Thinking, this is why I'm sitting here. So we'll just sing a little prayer that expresses that. Sangye chadang tsokhe chognam la jang chu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok. Sangye chadang tsokhe chognam la jang chu badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok. Sangye chadang tsokhe chognam la jang cho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye dropa shok. So yesterday we began talking about how to develop of these two wings. As I said, the Buddha says we need two wings. Wing of wisdom. A bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So we've been talking really most of the time about the wisdom wing, which is, as we've been saying, is all the work we do on our own mind to develop our own qualities, to establish our own difficulties, our own problems, so that we can develop our fantastic potential. And then the compassion, which is what brings benefit to us, And then the compassion wing is where we are able now to benefit others. But let's go back again to the wisdom wing and just talk a few more things, We've mentioned a few times this business about impermanence, I mean, remember, Buddha is not a creator. Buddha didn't invent all these things that we're listening to. Buddha didn't invent karma. He didn't invent what is called Buddhism. This is a major difference between Buddhism and other what we'd call religions, isn't it? It's important to remember this. So whatever we're hearing about what Buddha said is what it's from his own experience. He's observed it to be so, that this is how things are. The mind is this, and karma this, and blah, 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 And so one of the things Buddha talks a lot about is impermanence. And again, he didn't invent impermanence. Things change. This is basically what he's saying. And when we hear this, we think, well, come on, okay, Buddha, we know that. Give us something a bit more intelligent, please, But what he's saying is, that deep in our mind, we have this almost instinctive sense, that instinctive grasping at things as if they won't change. So what the consequence of this, of course, is when something good happens, we grasp at it and think, wow, finally I found happiness. Now everything's going well. And then we're shattered, of course, when it changes, And then when bad things happen, we become devastated. We want to go kill ourselves because life is so horrible and we'll think it'll never change. But both are not true. Things change. Okay, now Buddha's got really interesting explanations. When you look more deeply at his philosophy, he's got all these interesting explanations about this in a very subtle way, But the one that really is so important for us to think about in our daily life is to think about the impermanence of death, to think about death. So let's talk about this and why we would think about it, why we would need to think about it. Well, the simple reason is because it happens, it's natural. And we can see, like we were talking yesterday about fears, we have various fears, we've all got our different fears. And sometimes they dominate our lives, you know. But basically, if we analyse what fear is, it's fear, it's to do with, it's not wanting to confront something. We're afraid of something, you know, we're afraid of something, we're afraid of engaging in something. We don't want to go there. So it's just this big idea that we have in our mind. We build it up, something huge, you know. So the one of death is really classic, isn't it? In our daily life, in ordinary world, it's something that no one wants to think about. It's like a horrifying idea because it just seems like some big black hole, you know. And so we don't want to think about it. Then a common response is, oh, well, no one knows what happens anyway, and so how can you think about it? So in a way, you know, death isn't the point. It's not as if like death is some new special experience. It's simply a way of describing that things change, you know. That's all. I mean, you don't say your pen, when it breaks, you don't say the pen died. So death is a term we use for a fairly radical change, isn't it? So, okay, if you're a Christian, you have one view, a certain view about what happens, you know. If you're a materialist, you have another view. You know, if you're a Christian, there's something called the soul that will continue. And if you're a materialist, nothing continues. These are the two major views in the world, I think, isn't it? Most religions will talk about a soul, you know, most religions will talk about a heaven, the creator, so on. But the Buddha has like a bit of both in a way. I mean, he has similar views to other religions, but he talks, as we've been talking, he talks about the mind, consciousness. He doesn't use the term soul. But he would talk about a subtler, a more refined level of consciousness, level of mind, which is what leaves the body, you know. He would say that, and it will necessarily continue. So as we talked yesterday, you know, Buddha's view, because Buddha doesn't talk about creation, he's not a creator, he didn't invent us, you know. And in Buddha's terms, nor did our parents create us. They gave us a body, how kind, you know, thank you mother and father for giving me a body. But the person that we are, the consciousness, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the tendencies, the way we are inside, you know, who we are, the sense of self we have, all our qualities. This is our mind, this is our consciousness, as we've talked. But there are subtler, more refined levels of consciousness that we virtually never access, you know. And so, as we've been talking, the Buddhist view is that mind didn't begin in the mother's womb, it existed before, based on this simple principle of cause and effect, chicken and egg, you know. This moment of mind comes from the previous moment, and that moment exists because it came from a previous moment. And if that moment exists, it has to have come from a previous moment, and so on, going back and back. But the same going forward. The Buddha would say that mind cannot end, you know. It's this momentum that goes forward. Mind is beginningless and endless. This is the Buddha's view. And so as we've been talking, you know, due to karma, due to past actions, the word action, karma means action, we leave an imprint in this consciousness that then ripens in the future as one's experiences. So as we talked yesterday, one of the ways that our karma from the past ripens is in terms of the kind of life we get born into. So, you know, contrary to the usual materialist view, when you know, conception in your mother's womb is the beginning of Robina, that they create Robina. Well, the Buddha's, you know, roughly, the Buddha's explanation would be that, you know, the egg and sperm come together, but then the consciousness coming from before, due to many, many causes and conditions, you know, will find its way. A subtler level of that consciousness will find its way, on autopilot, will find its way to that mother's womb. So that consciousness will then take birth and is called Robina and leads a life and whatever, and then it will finish. As we all know, just look at our experience, we can see people die, you know. Person comes into being and they necessarily pass away. So one of the fundamental laws that the Buddha would say about impermanence that we really think about and which we need to do in order to come to terms with it experientially and not live in fear of it, you know, that the very nature of everything that exists, isn't it, is that it is in a constant state of change, constantly, moment by moment, you know. And so one of the things to understand about impermanence is the very coming into existence of something guarantees its ceasing. The cessation of something is within the coming into being of it. You can't have one without the other. If something comes into being, it has to finish. It has to. So in this sense, impermanence is just something utterly natural to everything that exists. So because we have all this very fierce attachment to the status quo, we want things to be this way, so we cling to it, and then we basically have a fantasy in the mind that that's how it is. It won't change. So let's say this is your grandma's beautiful antique cup, you know. Every day you build up all this thing around it. It's just a piece of china, right? And intellectually we all know china breaks. If you drop, what do you call it? Pottery, stuff, clay. If you drop it on the ground, it'll smash. We know this, but we're very attached to it. We want it to be there. So every day it's up on the shelf. We see it every day, grandma's cup. And then one day you see it's broken. You have a mental breakdown, What's wrong, Robina? Grandma's cup broke. Oh my God, the drama, the anger, the blame, the suing. I mean, it's just so painful. So, we all think we're suffering because our grandma's cup broke. But the Buddha's saying, no, you don't suffer because your cup broke, because breaking is natural. It's absurd to suffer about something that happens naturally. It's just the nature of what exists. It's silly to suffer about that. You're suffering because in your mind you had a big concept that it shouldn't break. And that's, like we've been talking across the board about the Buddha, how he's talking, that we have all these misconceptions in our mind, but deeply held, very spontaneous, that we assume are the truth, and then we build our life up on those false foundations. So we're walking around life, in other words, with this big misconception deep in the bones of our being that somehow things don't change. Although intellectually we know perfectly well they do. But experientially, emotionally, we act as if they don't. That's why we suffer. It's sort of like you got a $5 note and you keep thinking it's worth 50, and you rush out all full of expectations, and every time you go spend it you get disappointed. It's only worth 5 because you've got a wrong view about what it is. So you got your grandma's cup. It's impermanent. It's its nature. It's something inevitable. So within that, then we think, oh, well, if it's going to break, what's the point? Why not just smash it now, Why bother, If I'm going to die, I might as well just give up now. Why bother, That's not the point. It's within the fact that everything changes, then you make the most of life. So the particular point here that's really important to think about, why we think about death, is because we have the fantasy, that somehow death happens to other people, isn't it? Other people die, And secondly, if we do think of our own, and we don't like to, but if we even do, we don't need to think about it, we think, because it's way over there. It's a long way away. You can't see it, isn't it? Way into the future. So when I was 20, that's how I felt, and now I'm 60, I still think the same. It doesn't feel any closer to death. I kind of know I am when I look in the mirror. Intellectually, 60-year-olds are closer to death than 20-year-olds. Sometimes. 20-year-olds die too. So you kind of get a sense that you're moving towards death. But still, in your mind, when you think about it, it's not like you can look in your calendar and say, oh, well, it's 7 o'clock on, the 22nd of January 2007, I'll be dead. Okay, I better hurry, I've got not much time left. Which is how it should be, actually. But the difficulty is, of course, we know, we even think about how death is definite. Whatever comes into being is necessarily will pass away. And the reason, by the way, to think about this is not to make us fearful. We're already fearful. And we don't even think about it. The reason is to cut the fear, to face reality, and then, and this is the point, to use it as a wake-up call. To use it as a wake-up call. So people I know in prison, who are, like, say, on death row, for a while it becomes a big wake-up call, but even then they sink into believing they're real and permanent again and do the usual old dramas, Or if you get told you've got cancer or something, suddenly it's a huge wake-up call. And this is what Buddha's saying is we should give ourselves our own wake-up call. Because it's nonsense to think that, death is a long way off. Because, and so you think about these things, you try to prove it to yourself. It's true. As Lama Zopa says, it's ridiculous. We think, oh, I'm a living person. And, oh, Auntie Mary over there, she's a dying person. She's got cancer, Look how even we think when we say those simple words. A living person. What's a living person? You think what you mean by that. I'm not dying. Come on, don't be ridiculous. I'm a living person. What does that mean? Well, the logic in our mind, which is very stupid, is not good logic, is, well, I'm not sick. I haven't got a sickness. Well, do your market research. Healthy people die all the time. Then you might think, I'm not old. And, of course, we keep adjusting that, don't we? Definitely. But then, excuse me, do your market research, check up, young people die. So, and then this concept of living person die, it's really just a fantasy, because as Lama Zopa says, excuse me, living people die before dying people all the time. And you think about this, it's so true. But we have this concept in our mind, and then we believe that concept is the truth. We don't see the contradiction right in front of us. So the really crucial one to think about is that the time of death is uncertain. The time of death. And this one we really don't get at all. Because if you ask each one of us, we will not say we're close to death. Unless maybe we've got cancer or some virulent disease and we've got a couple of months to live. We might have this, you know. But still, there's a very vivid sense inside us that somehow this livingness is something solid and real, right? So the thing is, ask ourselves, do I have a date? Is it in my calendar, you know, my death date? Like you've got to go to the dentist on this day and I'll die on that day, you know? Sort of schedule it into your life. Of course, we don't think like this, right? Do we? And then we will think, you know, no, well, I don't know when I'm going to die. We have to admit this. We don't know. We can speculate, you know, within a very wide margin of like 50 years, you know, or 20 years if you're 60. You could say this. But actually, we don't know. We cannot be certain. Even the guys on death row, you know, one of our guys on death row in Kentucky, whom we've known, has been working very solidly on his appeals, like they all do. It takes 18, 20 years, and they kind of mentally think, okay, I've got 18, 20 years at least. He dies of leukemia. Comes from left field, you know, completely surprised. I mean, even when you think you got a certain time, you're still speculation. He suddenly died, you know. And it also, just the same in the other way, a friend of mine suddenly became a dying person. He was 40 years old, he had this virulent cancer, so suddenly he's turned from a living person to a dying person, right? Because the doctor said you've got 6 months to live. So suddenly he's there a dying person, okay? So he's, you know, and he's a friend of mine, and his wife's a friend of mine. They'd been divorced, and so she came back to be with him to help him die. Well, excuse me, 6 months later, she's looking at her clock, he's not dead yet. You know, so she eventually had to leave him again because he didn't die. So now he's completely a living person again because his cancer went away. So it's like even when you are called a dying person, you cling on to it as real. You know, come on, 6 months is up, what happened? I mean, we are ridiculous, you know. A friend of mine in Los Angeles, he went to help his father die of cancer. His father had cancer. He went to help him die, you know, to make amends and be a good son and everything. Well, then he got better, so they're all cheering and having a party, and then he dies of a heart attack. I mean, it's like we're so, you know, we have all these ideas. Even if we think a person's dying, they might not die. And the living people, they die. So whichever way we cling to it as real, we're so silly, you know. So our own selves, check it out, you know. You don't know when you're going to die. Well, if you check this, if it is true, you do not, with certainty, you don't know when you're going to die. Well, then you could die today, couldn't you? But you check how we feel when we hear this. We laugh. We laugh. It's like a joke. Don't be ridiculous. Die today. Come on. It's not possible, you know. So it's interesting, too. We think we're very rational people. We don't have any beliefs, we think. We're not sort of superstitious, you know. But excuse me, Buddha says, I'm sorry, it's not true. Our minds are riddled with beliefs. We believe in tomorrow. We believe in it absolutely. But I heard that something like 150,000 people a day die. Maybe it's even 1 million, I don't know. Some enormous number of people die average every day. And I bet you most of those people are called living people, you know. They're not dying people. I bet you. They're totally surprised by it, totally shocked that death should come. Because they have this conception of being a permanent person. Death is a long way off, you know. I mean, it's like these little analogies. It's very helpful for our mind. Like if you're driving in your car and in your gas tank, the thing is on empty. And you know it's not accurate because it doesn't work. But it's like you've got absolutely no idea, right, how much gas in the tank. You think like this. You've got no idea how much gas in the tank. Right? So every time you drive along, and you stop to get a cup of coffee and you start the car again. You go, oh, wow, amazing. There's still gas in the tank. You can't believe it. It's like a bonus, isn't it? Because you don't know when it's going to run out. So you're always waiting for it to run out. Well, you know, that sounds really crazy, but that's really how it should be with our life. We should think like this. Because actually, as we were talking yesterday about karma, you know, the Buddhist explanation for why we are what we are, and I didn't talk enough about karma. Maybe I should do this more today. Yeah, I'll talk a bit about it today, I think. The cause, you know, the main cause. There are many factors that bring everything to, you know, like in flowers and cups and everything. Many factors have to come together for there to be a cup. Many factors have to come together for there to be a plant. But we can locate main causes, can't we? And the main cause of a plant is a seed. Well, you know, as we've been talking very strongly, you know, the Buddha's view is the main cause of whatever we are is not a creator. And if you have the view of a creator, please, not being disrespectful. Buddha thinks it's okay to talk about these things. But Buddha would say it's not a creator. And also Buddha would say it's not your parents. They're not the main cause at all. They're just, you know, the creator, in Buddhist terms, Buddha has nothing to do with who you are. He didn't invent you. He has nothing to do with you or who you are. Your parents have something to do, like I said. They create your body. But the you, the person, the qualities, the person, that's from your past karma. The seeds you've planted in your consciousness from before. So one of the main, as I said yesterday, the main cause of one's having a human birth, for example, is past morality. So in other words, we've got a big, strong, and why we're still alive with this human birth, the breath is still going in and out, is because our gas tank of morality hasn't run out. So how come a child will, a child will die? Because they had that amount of morality, karma, that was in the tank, if you like, using that simple analogy. Or how come fetuses die? There it is, like we talked yesterday, a consciousness from a past life, consciousness, the consciousness propelled by the past karma, the morality karma, the non-harming karma, specifically non-killing karma, accumulation of that karma caused the mind to find its way to the human womb, like they won the lottery, But they lasted for 2 months in the womb. Karma finished, they died. You get out the womb, you last for a year, you die. You last for 2 years, you last for 20, 30, 70, whatever it might be. The main cause of this isn't your health. Isn't that you live in a good world. They're the secondary causes. They're all the conditions. The main cause is your past morality. And this is a very interesting concept, because if we can begin to get this one, then we know that if we want the life, if we want another one of these when we die, we better continue to practice morality. And this is the reasoning. This is the way to think upon thinking about karma, The learning from karma is telling us what we should do right now. It's very simple. When you look in your garden and you see the flowers and you see the weeds, and then when you look at your garden and you assess it and you think, do I want the weeds? No, thank you. Well, I better stop growing them. Do I want the flowers? Yes, please. So I'd better continue to grow them. This is the simple approach to using karma. So the main cause of our having a human life is morality karma. And the main reason it continues, why we're not dead yet, is because that morality, that tank of morality, if you like, hasn't run out yet, So like with that gas tank analogy is a good one, because we haven't got a clue how, we don't have a little meter telling us we've got only 2 years left, 4 years left, 5 years left, 20 years left. We have no clue. So for this reason alone, we should get such energy to not waste this precious life. To like wake up in the morning, like when you start your car, and my goodness, it's still going. Aren't I lucky? It sounds ridiculous to us, but thinking this way, eventually it really starts to work. You get some energy for life. And also, this becomes a very powerful antidote to all the usual kind of caught up in the miseries and the dramas and the hopeless and life's a drag and what to do. We really kind of get some energy from this, realising that what we do have is precious. And what a tragedy to waste it, Let me make the most of it today. So like I said last night, when the practice for when you went to bed last night, besides watching, seeing your dreams as dreams, was to remember that if you did wake up, and I'm assuming we all woke up this morning, any of us dead since yesterday? No? I don't know. That you wake up and you think, amazing, I didn't die yet. I didn't wake up in another realm, as Lama Zopa says. Which sort of initially sounds ridiculous to us, because the view of being permanent, solid, real me is so strong. When we say those other words, they don't have much impact, But slowly, slowly they will. So the main reason to think about the fact that death is definite and the time of death is uncertain is because it energizes us to not want to waste the life for as long as we have it, And we don't know, because we're not clairvoyant. We can't see exactly when our tank will run out, So there's a third point. So first, to think about how death is definite, how it happens to everything that comes into being. The second one is that the time of death is uncertain. But the third one is really the crux of it from the Buddha's perspective. At the time of death, at that time, at that moment, what is important? What's important? Well, if we take the Buddhist view, we have to, base it on a few of the views, base it on a few givens, on a few assumptions, Buddha's views, right? So given that this consciousness of ours, this mind, this continuity of mental moments, this mind of mine, given that it didn't begin at conception and won't end at death, first. Second, given the law of karma, what Buddha's saying, which is that given that everything I say, do and think, everything I say, do and think is an action a karma that necessarily leaves a seed or an imprint in this consciousness that will necessarily ripen in the future as one's experiences. This is what Buddha says, as we've talked. This is the law that determines the experiences of every living being. Given that the actions that are motivated by, the ego grasping and the fears and the anger and the hurt and the resentment and the jealousy and the attachment, all the unhappy states of mind, given that the actions motivated by those leave a seed in my mind that will ripen as my suffering in the future. Like we talked, in Buddhist terms, there's just this very natural relationship between negative states of mind, negative actions and suffering, and positive actions and suffering. It's not a judgment and reward thing. It's not moralistic. It's just a very factual thing, a very practical thing. So given that all the seeds I plant in my mind from actions that are motivated by goodness and kindness and compassion and benefit to others and all that, the positive actions, that they leave seeds in the mind that will necessarily ripen in the future as my happiness. And then finally, given that I do want happiness and don't want suffering, very simple. We're not even discussing other people yet. We're not even discussing compassion yet. Given these things, then it does follow logically, doesn't it, at the time of death, the only thing that is of any use to me at that moment, is the virtuous imprints or seeds that I've planted in my mind. The negative ones are worse than useless. They're going to ripen as suffering, and I don't want suffering. And all the things in this life that we consider important, that we see as the purpose of life, that we focus upon, we have to see too that they are not the main thing. They're not helpful to us. So this body, my family, my wealth, my reputation, whatever it might be in the life that we spend our lives usually supporting and sustaining, they are not much use to us at the time of death. So we've got to hear this really carefully, because Buddha's not being sort of nihilistic and saying, oh, well, chuck out your husband and chuck out your money and who cares? He's not saying that. When we get it really clear exactly what is important, then that will tell us how to be right now. So if we look at our usual view, most people, it's almost like a mantra. You ask them what's important in life. What's the purpose of your life? Family and health, they'll say. Family and health. Well, the Buddhist response would be, that's great, It's wonderful to have this. But if at the time of death, for your consciousness, which will continue, how will family and health help you? The healthy body is now dead. And how will your family help you? Your consciousness has now moved on, and that's no longer your family. You're now becoming someone else. So from the point of view of there being the crucial point of your life, Buddha would argue with this, and he'd say that's a mistake. So what's the point of this? Like I said, he's not saying chuck them out. He's simply saying change your approach to them. So right now we have attachment to our family, attachment to our wealth, health. We cling to them in a neurotic sense, He says that's not helpful. Because at the time of death, you've got to give them up. So why not start practicing giving up attachment now? Not giving them up, giving up attachment to them. And this is, as we've talked, is not an easy one to see. This doesn't mean giving up loving them. This doesn't mean giving up caring for them. Doesn't mean giving up working to support them. That's good. That's virtuous. That's appropriate. That's beneficial. That's altruistic. That is fantastic. But we have to recognise the part that's called attachment, and then the jealousy and the anger and the fears. Recognise those parts and give them up. Then, whether we die tomorrow or in 50 years' time, we've made the most of our life. We've made it useful because we've put virtuous seeds in our mind. So whether they ripen tomorrow in your body, in Robina's body, or they ripen tomorrow in another body, it doesn't matter. But if we just see the purpose of our life is to cling to this body and this life and this husband and those things, then when we die, we're left with nothing. The mind is devastated. So it's to practice virtue, positive, compassion, kindness, generosity, patience, non-attachment, non-anger. To practice that every day in relation to the wealth and the health and the family. Be a multimillionaire. Go for it. But don't cling to it. It's useless. It just becomes like water through your fingers. You'll end up with nothing. But use it to benefit others. How amazing. So when you die, the money's all gone, but the positive imprints are there, and that's what you need, because the mind continues. And again, this is not a moralistic thing. Don't hear it as sort of like judgment and punishment and reward and all this. Buddha would say this is a natural law, that what we put into the mind stays in the mind and then ripens in the future. So given that we do want happiness and we don't want suffering, and given that positive states of mind and positive actions are the cause of happiness and negative ones are the cause of suffering, then it follows logically what we should do. And that's why we have to think about it like this, very practically, not in a kind of fearful sense, practical. Sort it all out in our mind. And then because we've thought about how we could die at any moment, this energizes us even more to not waste this precious life. To not waste this precious life. So reminding ourselves, what does wasting this life mean? Well, wasting this life means to follow attachment, to follow the fears, to follow jealousy, to follow resentment, to follow hurt, to follow anger. In other words, as we've talked most of the time this weekend, to follow the unhappy states of mind, to follow the delusions, to follow the fears, to follow the anger and all the stuff, that stuff. That's what wasting this life is all about. It's like tipping it down the toilet. It's a tragic waste of this precious life. It's sort of like a really silly analogy, but it works for my mind. It's like what Buddha's saying is we've got this extraordinary resource. This human body, this human life is this amazing resource that we worked unbelievably hard to get from past life. It's the fruit of an enormous amount of positive energy, virtue, positive qualities, positive karma. We created it, okay? Now that alone should blow our minds, not to want to waste it. So a bit like, using this analogy then, it's a bit, but we don't, okay, so we don't appreciate that we're a precious resource. We just think, what a drag, life's a drag, and, we always look at the miserable side. We don't realise that we're this amazing resource, We just use it up, we waste it. And that's a bit like, like someone comes and visits you and you pull out of the cupboard this, boxes and boxes of these boring little pieces of paper like this, about this shape, and they're all green printed. And they've got numbers in the corner. And you've got no idea what it is, It's this boring stuff. You don't know what to do with it. You don't like the design. You don't like the green. It's all crumpled. You can't even wipe your bottom with it. They're so small, Then someone put this friend faints. They go, Robina, you've got no idea what you're talking about. You've got millions of dollars in there, I mean, it's a silly example, but it's a very good one. So because you don't know, they're just small pieces of paper, aren't they? And they are pretty boring design. And they've got numbers in the corner. They're useless bits of paper. You can't do anything with them, right? As simply as a piece of paper, it's useless. So in other words, you've got this resource in your cupboard, in your closet, but you've got no idea. You don't appreciate what it is. So you sit it up there. And then when you see it, you moan and complain about it. How stupid. Even if you're not greedy, you can see that's stupid, Even if you have one with one in the corner, we feel sad if we lose it. We feel sad if we only get 50 cents worth. We feel cheated if we don't get our whole dollar's worth, So we have a real appreciation of the value of this thing, and it's just paper, because we understand it's more than just paper. It represents something that if you give it, you can get something. It's a resource. That's what a resource means. Well, this life is like this. But no, we don't think of ourselves like this, do we? We moan and complain, and I'm hopeless, I'm no good, and no one loves me, and we're totally obsessed with ourselves. It's sort of like being obsessed with making the paper all nice and clean every day, and looking at it every day, and fixing up the green printing, and ironing it to make it all smooth, and then putting it back in the cupboard again. Sorry, looking after your body like that is not helpful. Moaning and complaining about the lousy design. You might be a lousy design, I agree. Meanwhile, still, it's valuable. You are valuable. You can do something with this precious life. You created the cause. You worked hard to get those dollars. You forgot, that's all. You worked hard to get this human life. This is the Buddha's view, It's not a gift from someone else. You worked unbelievably hard. We would be in tears of gratitude if we actually realised how much virtuous karma, positive karma, morality karma we created in the past to get this human life. It's a very, as we look at the usual views in the world, this is not a concept that is, current in the world at all. This is the Buddha's view, though. So having the sense of the preciousness of who you are, that you worked so hard to get this body, to get these conditions, to get this life. And not only that, as we talked yesterday, morality is the cause of having a human body, the cause of why your consciousness found its way to your present mother's human womb. But generosity, giving, is the cause of having anything. Even you can have a grain of rice. It's the fruit of your past generosity. If you've given, then we receive. So how come we can receive anything in this life? You know, maybe we're not super rich, but the fact that we can get a job, just like this. We're grateful to the people who give us the job, but you know the main cause of it is our past generosity. That we had a little bit of generosity in our gas tank, and then we're able to use it. It got us the job, you know. We were able. We're not on the streets like other people. This is because of our generosity. The fact that we can get money easily, get credit, get a job, have people give us, people pay their debts. All of this, which we take for granted. This is the fruit of our past generosity. So to have a decent human life, in order to do something useful with it, to use it as a good resource, we need morality and generosity. And now clearly we have, you know, buckets of this. That's how come we are who we are right now. So what we think, okay, we take stock. What can I do with this? Not just look at it every day and feel sorry for it, which is what we do. It's totally self-centered, you know. Let's think, let me use this. So how do you use it? To get more of it? Because you can't just keep your dollar in the cupboard. It won't help. You've got to spend it. Well, best is to invest it, actually, isn't it? Get more than $1's worth from it. But the minimum use of $1 is get $1's worth. Well, the minimum use of this human life is practice more morality so that when you die, you get another human life. That's the minimum use. To do less than that is like using, you know, using it to wipe your bottom. Just stupid waste of a life. To use this life to be harmful and negative and destructive or just miserable or self-centered or depressed, the usual, or jealous or angry. You're not criticising any of us, but caught up in ourselves. This is a waste of this life. It's utterly useless. Useless. So at least use this precious human rebirth to get another one, to practice morality, which brings you happiness now and benefits others and keeps the whole momentum going. More than this, you can actually, you can get some, you can really get some good return on your dollar. And that is by using it to realise emptiness and get rid of all the delusions. And even more than this, you can practice the compassion wing. You can become an enlightened being, all the way to perfection, to benefit others. All of this we're capable of doing with this human resource, you know. So this is not ways we think. We don't think of this life as if we work to get it. I mean, it's quite a shocking concept that we created the cause to have this human life. We totally think it's either God who did it or our mummy and daddy who did it. The Buddha says, excuse me, you did it. So this really kind of like, wow, what a tragedy to waste this hard work that I've done, you know. And then you think about how it's totally impermanent, could end at any moment, don't know how long it's going to last. So increase our wish to not waste this precious resource. Develop our qualities, benefit others. That's it, you know. So let's talk a bit more about karma, I think. How it works a little bit. Just to remind us if we've heard it before, and if not, to hear it freshly. So, as we said yesterday, you know, this word karma, Sanskrit, it means action, and it refers to everything we say, do, and think. Everything we say, everything we do, everything we think is an action, a karma, that leaves a seed in the mind. This is the simplest analogy. And that nothing we do, say, and think goes astray. See, this is a very interesting concept, this sense of interdependence, this sense of cause and effect. We don't have that much at all. You check. What Buddha's saying is that everything we do, say, and think has consequences for oneself. Not just not externally. So, but you check the view we tend to have in life, you know. I know as a kid, my philosophy was I would do anything until someone told me to stop. You understand my point? We have this view, don't we, that if we get away with something, if mummy doesn't see, we got away with it. Well, this is a really childish view, Buddha says. Because mummy seeing whether you did good or bad has got nothing to do with it. Karma is a natural law that whatever you say, do, and think, whatever any living being does, says, and thinks, you know, an animal, an insect, a dog, a giraffe, they're all sentient beings. Everything any living being does, says, and thinks leaves an imprint in that consciousness that will ripen in the future in that consciousness as that being's experiences. So when we begin to get this view of cause and effect, it really kind of causes us to be bolt upright. Just like we understand when we know about food. We've learned a bit about food in our lives, you know, nutrition these days. And we know our own selves, we eat this and this, it'll cause us to get sick. So even though we like the taste, if we're sensible, we will leave it alone because we know the consequences to ourselves. We're not talking great compassion for other people yet. So this is exactly the view that Buddha has, but he's not talking about physical things, he's talking about the mind. That what we think and say and do brings consequences to us. This is huge. It makes us so responsible. It makes us so grown up, you know, not like a child. Mind especially. I mean, we would tend to think, oh, well, it's only the mind. As long as no one sees it, it's okay. But Buddha says everything in our mind, every thought, every feeling is constantly producing ourself. So if we live in a fantasy world in our head and are full of anger or full of hurt or full of resentment, excuse me, you're producing a very unhappy person. You'll become a really disturbed person. You're producing yourself. So when we have this view of cause and effect, that whatever we say, do and think brings consequences to ourself, it really alerts us. We really develop a very strong sense of responsibility, you know. Kind of we grow up, become mature. So the first way, as we talk, the first way karma ripens is in terms of the life that our consciousness will go into from a previous life, you know. Because as long as there are delusions in the mind, then we're going to keep taking rebirths according to those delusions. So simply speaking, they would say not more than 7 weeks before conception in our present mother's womb, our consciousness was in another body of one kind or another. But let's just assume for now that we were in another human form. At that time of that death, you know, at the time of the death process, you know, and it's described very clearly, as we know in the Buddhist tradition, the consciousness, the strong, before you stop breathing, the strong morality, in our case, morality karma, a propensity of non-harming karma, which we can kind of deduce from that we spent that life practicing, you know, probably practicing a spiritual path, you know, practicing virtue, particularly not killing, not harming. As we know, Buddha would say, don't kill any living being. So particularly not harming and not killing. That's the main energy of morality. Minimally refraining from harming others, not to mention actively benefiting them. But even refraining from harming others is a powerful way to benefit, isn't it? If you make a decision to stop killing all sentient beings, it protects you karmically. But hey, all the lucky rats and roaches get a life, you know. They're very grateful. So it benefits others. So the karma of the morality karma ripened. That is to say, that was the karma that was prevalent. And then by the time the consciousness completely ceased, the death came, everything ceased, you know, and the consciousness eventually left the body. It's already on autopilot. There's no volition. Oh, I think I'll get born over there. Not like that. You know, there's no volition there. But that consciousness, yours, is propelled by the force of that karma. And it finds its way due to many, many, many causes and conditions. It's very complex, actually. It found its way to this present mother's human womb. So that implies we've got this strong karmic connection, as they say, with this particular mother, the one who gave birth to us, you know. Strong karmic connection with that sentient being, with her consciousness, and with the father. Well, depending on the way the life manifested for them, with us, you know. Strong connection with those consciousnesses. So then we get so the first way our karma has ripened, the first of the 4 main ways karma ripens, as we talked yesterday, is that we get, in our case, we got a human life. So let's just say in the past life we kind of, you know, might have been a human, let's say, but we just kind of, you know, killed and went fishing and killed the ants and do the usual things that most people do. Kill the roaches and kill the rats and like that. You didn't think twice. And kind of was a reasonably nice person. You weren't Hitler or anything. Fairly nice person, but you kind of gossiped and you badmouthed your next door neighbour and you badmouthed your husband and you kind of, you know, followed your anger and followed your depression and followed your jealousy and didn't really make an effort to work on yourself. You just used up your gas tank from past life. You just used it all up. And then, especially the killing one, which is quite strong. It leaves heavy imprints in the mind. You never thought about death, never thought about impermanence. So the time death came, you've used up your morality, and the non-virtue ripens, the killing especially, and you're freaking out at the time of death because you never thought about it. So then the killing karma is the karma that ripens, and so that, when the consciousness leaves the body, propels it on autopilot, and it finds its way to, let's say, the lion mummy's womb, you know. the fish's egg or something. Depends. In our case, it was the human one. So we won the lottery. We got a human life. But then you've got 3 other ways in this life that our karma ripens. And we can see that, you know, negative karma ripens. Plenty of negative karma. So let's look at these 3, other 3. So let's just, you know, the next one, they call this actions similar to the cause. And that's the name given to all our own tendencies. So, of course, as we discussed, we all just commonly think that mummy made us and daddy made us and, you know, we produced by our parents. But the Buddha would say all our characteristics, all our qualities, all our tendencies, all our good ones, our bad ones, whatever they might be, these are ours. No one made these. They're just a bunch of habits that we brought with us, you know. They're just a bunch of habits we brought with us. And that they've now, a few of them have now ripened. A few of them have now ripened. So we can see it by looking at our own minds. Since we're children, we can see our certain tendencies, haven't we? Maybe we're very kind, very patient, maybe very intelligent, maybe not so intelligent, maybe generous, maybe angry, maybe depressed. We've got all these tendencies, this highly complex package, you know, that is this person that we are. They're ours. No one made them. We brought them with us. So then the third way our karma ripens is, as we called it, as we said yesterday, is called experiences similar to the cause. And this is the name given to all the stuff that happens to us, how people see us, the kind of life we have, whether people hate us or like us, whether we're born in a poor country or a rich country, whether we're born to ugly parents or nice parents, all the stuff that happens to us, you know. The main cause of all of this is also our past actions. This is not just accidental. We're not just plonked here by someone else arbitrarily, you know, which is how we tend to think. It's like bad luck, I've got a lousy life, what to do, you know. Buddha says not like this. Everything we experience, everything, Buddha says, is the fruit of our past actions, the main cause. Many factors come together, but the main one is our past actions. So we look at our life and see how people see us. Let's say people, you know, really like us. They look at us and they find us very appealing. This is due to past patience. Let's say people look at us and they don't like us. Let's say they're very afraid of us. This is due to past harming of others. We mightn't do anything wrong now. Remember, you might look in your mind now and you see you've got very good tendencies. You're a very patient person, a very kind person. That's one karma. And that's how you are now. But then you've got this other karma, remember, called experiences similar to the cause, and then you see that people are mean to you. People don't like you. People are afraid of you. You've done nothing wrong now, but that's the actions from the past ripening in the present. Let's say you're a mean person now, very mean and ugly, you know. You might still have good karma from this side. People really like you. They look at you and they like you. You're good friends, good support, you know. So these two tracks, they're like tracks of karma, and they don't have much relationship. In other words, this is the explanation of why good things happen to bad people and why bad things happen to good people. This tends to really surprise us, that good things can happen to bad people. But they're two tracks of karma, you know. How people treat us, how we're seen, is a whole bunch of karma from the past ripening in the present. How we are now is also a bunch of karma ripening in the present, and they can have two things. So you might have one person, let's say, who you know, okay, one of the karmic results. Okay, let's use one action and talk about how it ripens in these 3 ways. And then the fourth one, like we talked yesterday, remember, environmental karma. I'll describe. Just use one action called killing, let's say. So the way killing would ripen from the past in terms of the type of life you're born into, which is called the fully ripened result, the first one. Like I said, killing would ripen and it would cause you to get a suffering life, like a lion rebirth or a human, you know, an animal birth or something. It couldn't possibly ripen as a human rebirth, if that were the karma that ripened at the time of your death. The second way killing ripens, and we can see in this present life, even though we've got a good life called a human life, the way killing would ripen in this life is, first of all, as in actions similar to the cause, will be the tendency to kill. Now look at the world. All these millions of humans, you know, billions of humans, got a good human life because of morality. Non-killing karma ripened in the present, they got a human life. But because there's the tendency to kill, you know, and karma's complex, how it ripens, then that karma manifests in this life. So there they are. They kill the fish, they kill the roaches, they kill the rats, never thinking twice. Most cultures do it. Even most religions say it's fine to kill creatures, you know. Buddha would say to kill any living being is not appropriate. And we'll talk in a minute about just what it is that makes things negative, makes things positive. How do we understand that, you know? The real heart of the meaning of what is morality, what is ethics, why, what is good, what is bad, and why. It's extremely important to understand, I think. So the third way killing would ripen in this life would be you get killed, or you die young, or you get sick. They are the experience similar to the cause, that type of karmic result of past killing. So look at the world. Lots of people die young. Lots of people get sick. Lots of people get killed. So that's the fruit of killing. But you can see, you can have a person who might never kill in this life, but who gets killed. Look at all the Tibetans. They wouldn't even kill a fly, you know. But many of them got killed by the Chinese. A sixth of the population died in the last 40 years because of the Tibetan business. So they died young. They got killed. Well, that's the fruit of their past killing from, 22 lives ago. Who knows? But they mightn't have the tendency to kill now. Whereas you can have another person who spends their life killing the fish, killing in the army, whatever, but they live till they're 94. So they don't have the experience similar to the cause of killing. So these two tracks of karma can be together. Do you see? So the environmental karmic result of killing is that, let's say, the very things that are meant to nourish you, like food and water and so on, they poison you, they harm you, they make you sick. And look at these days, the number of children with these environmental diseases. It's so common, isn't it? For most of us, we can't eat this, we can't eat this, we can't eat this. More and more fussy these days, I'm quite sure, than we used to be. This is the environmental karma of killing. That what's meant to nourish us actually harms us. And every action, positive and negative, you can say has these 4 different results, each in their own way, So let's look at how we create karma and what are the main determining factors in the creation of karma. We talked briefly yesterday, we mentioned this business of motivation, didn't we? Let's go into this a bit now. Okay, so in general, what Buddha's saying is, killing, lying, stealing, bad-mouthing, whatever, actions with our body and speech that harm others, that's what you define as, that's what you call a negative action. So if you're a Christian, it's an interesting point to think about. I remember asking a Catholic friend of mine, because I was brought up a Catholic friend of mine, I said, what is a sin? What defines it? What is it? Or a negative action, if you like. And he said, necessarily, it's that which goes against the will of God. Now, if it's true that God created the universe, there is a God who creates the universe, then fine, that's perfect. Makes complete sense, But that's not the Buddha's view, as we've been talking. So Buddha says, just like Christ, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. But the reason he says it isn't because he invented it and he wants you to do it because he said it. He's simply like a kind parent pointing out to us that if you do this, it'll harm you. If you do this, it'll harm you. First step, first one. If you do this, it'll harm you. So it's a bit like, when you're a kid, and I think I said this one, and your mother says, don't go near the fire. And you say, why not? And she'll probably say, because I say so. And so you don't. But we all know, we eventually learn in our life, that's not the real reason not to go near the fire, is it? Like I said, it'd be very silly if you spent the rest of your life not going near the fire because mummy said so when you're 67, Oh, don't go near the fire, mummy said so. I'm sorry, that's not enough, is it? You've got to learn eventually the real reason not to go near the fire, because it will burn you. This is the point. So Buddha's being like a skillful parent who's pointing out to us that it's not appropriate to kill, lie, steal, blah, blah, blah. Because it will harm you. That's his first kind of main point. So the broader point, though, the broader point about how we define a negative action, without even going into it too much, it's very simple. If it harms another, don't do it. That's what defines it as being a negative action. Buddha's pointing out that it'll create the cause for you to have suffering, but what it is in its nature, a negative action, is one that harms another. It's very straightforward. And you just check. Ask a person. Do market research, like I said. Check out what people feel like when they're lied to, stolen from, bad-mouthed, harmed. No one likes it. A dog doesn't like it. An ant doesn't like it. So that's what harming others is. So for this reason, don't do it. For this reason, I mean, that's a negative action. So what's interesting about that, if we look into it in a bit more detail, we'll really understand why that is so, how that is so, you know. So the Buddhists think about, okay, in order for any action we do, let's use an example of killing that ant on my kitchen sink. Let's say, there's my kitchen sink, there's my ant. In order for that action of killing that ant to bring what they call the fully ripened result, for it to be a complete action, there have to be 4 conditions in place. And this is really how we analyze, you know, how we create karma. So the first one, and the most important, is the intention to do it. In other words, the mind engaging in the thought, I will kill the ant. That's intention. That's the most important. That's even the meaning of karma. You can say the word intention is synonymous with the word karma. It's interesting. The mind engaging to do that action. Intention. Once the intention is there, then, you know, of course, then that's fine. That's the first one. Then you've got to have the object, the ant, the action, kill it, the result, it's dead. If those 4 are in place, intention, object, action, result, that's a complete action. It leaves a karmic seed in your mind that will ripen in the future in the fully ripened way as suffering lives. So now, let's look at intention. Let's look at intention. And this helps us understand why killing is called a negative action. Why a person creates a negative karma when they do it. The intention isn't enough to make it negative. If we break intention down, we have to see that there's a reason you kill, isn't there? There's a reason. It's not just some meaningless action, like picking up a tissue, you know, picking up something. There's a reason behind it, isn't there? And look at the reason in the world normally why you'd kill the ant on your kitchen sink. It's called aversion, anger. How dare that ant be on my kitchen sink, right? This just goes without saying. Look at the world. Why people go to war, why people kill, you know, the rats kill the roaches, you know, why people do those things is because of anger. Now, you don't go fishing because of anger, so another motivation for killing is attachment, isn't it, when it comes to eating food. Then, you know, all the slaughterhouses and the, you know, for example, they look pretty horrific. If you look at the pictures in the television about the slaughterhouses, they look incredible. But the person doing it is not full of anger, are they? They're just simply doing it because it's their job. But, you know, why the system is set up, why people go fishing, is because it's attachment to eat the flesh. So attachment as a motivation is not as heavy as aversion. It's still heavy because it's self-centered. It's for your benefit. No concern for the fish. But the heavy one, we can see why you kill that ant, why you kill that person, why you know, why our gangster friends in prison have wars with each other. It's pure hate, you know, aversion. Why you have wars. It might be to defend your country, but often it's out of anger for that other group of people, you know. So we can see the heaviest motivation for killing, and you have to have a reason for doing something. There's usually just not, you know, we might think there's a reason sometimes, like you just kill the mosquito without even thinking. This is bringing us to the second point. If we have the heading called, you know, intention, there's a couple of these other factors that actually play the major role in determining the quality of the karmic result for you. So motivation is the main one, the most important of all. But the other one is huge. It's habit. So we can see on this earth, like I said, you know, you sit in the kitchen and, you know, you see the ant there. Hardly even arises in your mind. It's almost like second nature. You just kill it automatically. And then but if you analyse it carefully, there will be your reason you kill is because of aversion. You don't want that ant on your kitchen sink. But then because the habit is so strong, you just do it second nature. This is the worst one. Not the worst, but it's one of the worst because it becomes so ingrained in you, you don't even think about it. That's why the actions of animals is so heavy. They just do it spontaneously because it's totally, as we call it, instinctive. That means it's very, very deeply ingrained. The habit is so strong. So strong. So motivation, though, is the most important one. Now, we can see this because let's say, you know, Mary also has an ant on her kitchen sink And she sees the ant and she sees his little legs are mangled and she goes, oh, the poor little ant. So she has compassion for the ant. Her heart reaches out for the ant, to the ant, you know. Then she thinks, oh, I must kill it and stop its suffering. So she kills the ant. Now, as far as the two ants are concerned, they're both dead. They don't care what we think. From the side of the ant, they're dead, right? From someone else looking on, they can't see the difference. Robina kills an ant, Mary kills an ant. Most looks, you know, or naughty people killing ants. But Robina's action, even though we can generally say that killing is wrong because it harms sentient beings, that's a fact. But that doesn't mean that the action you do is a negative one, because unless the motivation is negative, which in my case it was, then that's what determines my action as being negative. But Mary's action, her motivation was positive, wasn't it? Compassion. So you could almost argue she doesn't create much negative karma at all, because motivation is the key determining factor. The karma we create centers on the motivation. This actually is an extremely important point to really think about this. The implications of this are quite profound for our whole life, you know. Except in relation, there's certain, okay, all actions in general are like this. Okay, let me say more things first. Let's look at Mary's action now as an added point to Mary's action. Because of Mary's own motivation of compassion, we can say that Mary didn't create negative karma, probably even created positive karmic seed, because even though her action was killing, her reasoning was pure. But, as the Dalai Lama said one time, compassion is not enough. You need wisdom. So in this case, and this is a very good point for us on this earth, especially talking about euthanasia and killing all the creatures and putting down our little doggy-woggies when they get sick, as we call it, putting them down, putting them to sleep, all these euphemisms we use. You know, we've got to look at motivation. You see, motivation is what impacts upon me. The ant couldn't care less if Mary has a good motivation. The ant is dead. My motivation for killing the ant and Mary's motivation for killing the ant have no impact on the ant. They are the things that determine the quality of the karmic action that each of us creates, which then determine the karmic result. This is the point here. Are you getting it clear what I'm saying, people? Or am I saying too many words? Is it clear? Okay, good. So it's really important points if you think about karma. So, okay, but let's look at Mary's action. Compassion's not enough. You need wisdom. So what does that mean, you know? Well, that means, like we all know in ordinary life, you won't do an action unless you know the consequences, will you? See you later. Bye, darling. See you. So, you know, if you won't do an action unless you know the consequences, right? So let's say I've got a headache, you know, and you've got an aspirin, you've got a cyanide, but you just pill, but you just can't remember which is which. You're not going to say to me, oh, Robina, please, I have such compassion, please take a pill. Because you don't know the consequences. You'd rather I stay with my headache, and so would I. You see my point here? Very simple. If you don't know the consequences, then you back off and you mind your own business, please. It's very arrogant. How dare we interfere with that ant? Because we have compassion. That's great for us. But then the action we do, unless we can say definitively that it will benefit the ant, and of course in this context here, that means you have to have the capacity to see the mind of the ant. Now, who has that wisdom? Most of us don't. So that if you don't have that wisdom, you have no right in killing that ant. It's outrageous. It's arrogant, you know. Just same with your mum, your grandma. Don't do the same to her either. Please, back off. Leave her alone. Unless you can be certain that killing her now will actually help her consciousness, when it leaves that body, take a good rebirth. Because that's the only way you can have that certainty, given Buddha's view of continuity of consciousness. It's very rude of us, you know. So take care of the ant. Say mantras for it. Put it near a holy image. Protect it from getting harmed. Let it die its own natural way. Let its own karma take care, you know. That's compassion, based on whatever wisdom you do have. Sure, if you have the wisdom to see, it'll get a good human rebirth now, well, sure, kill it. I mean, kill me now if you see that, please. It's a very skillful action. Your motivation's for my sake, and your wisdom says it's okay. That's pretty profound. So is that clear, this point, people? Do you want to ask questions about that one so far, and I'll say some more things? Well, go. Yes, sweetie pie, go, Joan.
I have a very important and burning question.
Where's the microphone? Give it to Joan. Tell us, darling. Come on. It's okay, sweetie. Relax. Come on, Joan. It's all right. Tell us. Tell us, darling. What happened?
Well, I've made a new agreement not to lie and not to kill, not to cheat or steal. And
Well
I
done.
lied on Friday night.
Naughty Joan.
No, well, in here when I said, ever since the birth of my third child, I
Yes.
had this. But that's not quite true. It's with my twins, I nearly lost my life because I'm a bleeder. They can't
Right.
stop me bleeding.
Sure, darling.
And then 7 years later, I had my third child,
Yes.
and they really battled to save my life then.
Yes.
It was touch and go.
Yes.
Well, I was very ill after that, and then when she was 7 months old, I got pregnant again.
Uh-huh.
And I just knew I couldn't go through with it.
Right, sure.
Because my husband was a louse and a drunkard, and I had these...
I understand. So what you're telling us is you had an abortion?
Yeah, I had...
Okay, darling,
and
so
it's
what's your
ever
question?
since then...
Joni, what's your question?
Well, the thing is, I've wondered if I should have... When you talk about the consciousness,
Yes, yes.
what happened to that
Sure, darling.
consciousness? I have wondered if I
Yes.
should have had that child and I was meant to be
Okay,
dead then.
darling, listen, Joan, fact is you didn't have it. Fact is you had an abortion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the fact.
But
so
ever
we've
since
gotta-
then, I've been so sad and depressed.
Good, I understand that.
And I just felt maybe that consciousness
Yes.
has been so sad that it couldn't be with me. And what happened?
Darling,
to
listen, Joan, the thing is, the main thing, sweetie pie, I understand what you're saying. It's good you're understanding what's going on inside you.
Yeah.
The main point is this, sweetheart, at this moment in time, it's like being very rational about it. What are the facts? Fact is, how many years ago?
32.
32 years ago, you killed your baby. Well, you know, I did too. That makes two of us, and I bet there are an awful lot more of us. And it's not being emotional about it, it's a fact. It's a consciousness, due to karma, found its way to our womb, and then due to many causes and many conditions, you know, we decided we'd stop it for all sorts of reasons. It's very complex. So we have to take responsibility for that fact. So like,
Yeah.
were you here last night when we did the meditation? Last night. We did the 4 opponent powers. Were you here last night?
Yes, yes,
So we did that meditation?
yes.
So then you're the first one of regretting.
Oh, yes.
Did you think
deeply.
about that?
Yes.
Okay, darling, you're on the right track. It's cool. It's okay. Don't have to be panic-stricken about it. Or it's good that you bring it up. It's good that it's there. But the crucial thing is, what can I do about it? And because the Buddhist view is saying there's no karma, we can't purify, then we take responsibility. And the fact that you have this feeling and this compassion, that's fine. But there's no point in speculating, maybe this and maybe that. It's due to the karma. You see, the point is this, Joan. It's also, this is like, things are interdependent. There's you and there's that baby. And you made a certain decision, but that was also very strongly due to the karma of that consciousness. It created the cause to get your womb, but honey, it had also created the cause from its own past killing to be killed by you. So don't take responsibility for its action. You take responsibility for yours. And that means you regret it. And then the fourth one, which you've done already, you vow never to kill again. And sweetie pie, that's purification.
Well, I saw a spider last night
Yep.
on the bulletin board,
Yes,
and I was
yeah.
going to zap it.
And you didn't. Well
And I
done.
thought, oh, no, I can't. You're going to have to go free.
There you go,
know?
girl. You're doing
Yeah.
perfect. So you can rejoice,
Yeah.
darling. You can rejoice that you're dealing with it. See, this is what the depression for you in this case. Depression, you know, because of your fears and your anxiety and your feeling of bad and your guilt. It's just this whole big bubble of stuff, you know. So good, let it all out, girl. It's fine. But
Thank
move
you.
forward, take stock, do the regretting, and you know.
That has
change.
caused most of the sadness all these
Of course,
years.
it has, darling. I know that.
I think what would it have been like,
No, I
you know, would
but
my
that's-
life be
But
different?
that's useless. That's
It is,
meaningless.
yes.
That just adds to your troubles.
Yeah.
The fact is it happened due to the karma between the two of you. Move forward and change and start being different now. That's what we have to do with our lives.
Thank
Take
you.
stock and move forward, darling.
Thank you. One more question.
Yes, dear.
While I'm here.
Yep.
Now, on this question of karma, I worry terribly. I've got to work on this attachment to my daughters because the one is very sick with asthma.
Uh-huh.
Even at this point, she may be in hospital again. Now, from the question of karma, what about prayers for her? How
Of course,
can I
fantastic. Go for it.
Yes.
Marvelous. So much
Pray
you can
for
do.
her.
Of course
Pray
you can.
for them.
Sure thing. Go for it.
Is that okay?
Oh,
or do
gosh.
they have to just accept their karma, you know?
Darling girl, don't be ridiculous. You know, you see a dog dying. Oh, it's got to have its karma. I'm not going to help it. Come on, our job is to help people.
Yeah.
Karma is the explanation of why things happen. Compassion is what to do about it.
Yeah.
Do you see my point? Are you hearing me? Listen, dear. Joan. Karma is simply an explanation of seeds and fruits. It's explaining to you botany. It's just telling you why there's a flower in the garden and why there's a weed. It's just telling you why there's one there. But then you have to know what to do with it. Do you understand? So then you know why a person has certain suffering, but then our job is to have compassion and to have the wisdom to know how to help them.
Yeah.
Well, there's no contradiction between these two.
No, but also I can help them by distancing myself a bit, because
You have to have the wisdom to know how to help them, Joan.
Yes.
Compassion is
Yeah,
not enough.
the
You need
wisdom to
wisdom.
know.
Much of our compassion now is sentimental nonsense, and it just gets in the way.
Yeah.
So we have to have the wisdom to know what to do when.
Right.
Doing prayers for them is marvellous. Nothing wrong.
I see.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, sweetheart. Someone else?
I have a question about like the new technology with keeping people's bodies alive longer.
Yes.
And I mean, because so many people keep people's bodies alive. I mean, what happens
That's
to
right.
their consciousness when they're...
I know, it's a very interesting point, isn't it? I think on the one, just sort of looking at it, in the West we've got this obsessive thing to keep something alive at all costs. It's like frantic, isn't it? And we can see the good thing of this, and we've got advances in medicine and so on. But the negative side is because we just can't bear to think about death. We think anything alive at all costs is better than what we think is horrible, which is called death. But it's so unrealistic, right? Isn't it? So on the one side, okay, so that's point first. The other point is, of course, unless we can see the mind of this person, it's not possible to know. So in the Western world, like with that latest case, you know, that lady, that one, you know, all the fuss and bother about that, that's fine, whatever. But the point is, because the Western view of mind is that it's related to brain activity. So if you can't see the activity, there's no brain there. So that everybody would say that there was nothing happening for her. But then, like, if you're asleep, no one can see the activity of what's going on inside you, but you know your mind is there. You have all these vivid dreams, all sorts of things going on. So you could actually say that a person who's in a coma is in like a dream state. Their subtler mind is functioning, and it's just experiencing things like a dream. Just the same, probably more vivid even. But it can't come back into the grosser level of consciousness. But that doesn't mean it's not existing. So it's unfortunate that if, you know, because of the machinery these days and all the technology, we can keep it alive until it's 110. Well, it's just we've got to make a choice at some point, you know. So it's not helpful.
But, well, my grandfather was in a coma for 1.5 years.
Yep.
And my family was divided.
Yep.
He was one level away from brain dead, and the only emotion he had was just pain and agony. And my grandmother couldn't let him go because she didn't want to feel that it was her responsibility.
That's right.
That he died.
Yes.
And so eventually they stopped the antibiotics.
Yes.
And they stopped suctioning his lungs, so he
Yes.
basically died because
Right.
of that.
Right.
And so when, I mean, people have this responsibility that it's their fault if they die
know.
because of all these things.
That's
When is
right.
it okay to let somebody go? And
Yeah. See, this is the point I'm saying, using the example of the ant. That's a classic example of how much wisdom do you have? How much can we see? We obviously, with an ant, we haven't got a clue about its mind, what it's thinking, what its karma is. This is the point that I'm saying here. Do you understand the point so far? Does that point make sense? We don't know. So then if you really don't know the consequences for that ant of your doing something to it, you don't do it. You just don't, you can't interfere. So the trouble is with this, if things were allowed to go their natural course, he would have just died, wouldn't he? But because we have created this technology that artificially keeps people alive, which in certain cases, until the person gets better, is really effective. But if it keeps the person alive forever, it's just a bit bizarre. It's not helpful. So that's the dilemma. It is because of that. It's a dilemma, isn't it? So I remember the Dalai Lama answering this point with people. He said that it's obvious if the person can't sustain, there's no guarantee they can stay alive without it, and they won't get better. Then obviously it's best to stop the machine, and then use and make sure that you use all their things and give to others, which makes it beneficial for them. And then do in Buddhist terms, you do prayers and practices to help that person. Because it's this artificial situation we've invented, isn't it? I mean, it's great to have all this technology that helps the person while they're very sick, and then they get better. That's brilliant, isn't it? Helps a lot more people stay alive than who would have. But in this kind of case, it's probably not. It's like in the Terry Shavo case too, I don't know. But then at the same time, there was another story recently, or was it when I was in Australia? I'm confused where it was. I read recently. A person who was in a coma for 15 years. Was it here? Who was it? This woman, wasn't it? She suddenly woke up and started talking. That one. Yeah, so it's hard to know, you know. And because, you see, this is the point, using Buddha's terminology, because we don't have clairvoyance to see the mind of a being. All we can do is use what wisdom we have got, and with the purest motivation, to do the best we can, and that in Buddhist terms would include doing prayers for them and this kind of thing. Do what is reasonable, you know. It's not an easy thing. You see my point?
Yeah.
But to have all this guilt is not practical.
It
This
just
is the
seemed
trouble.
almost like he was being punished in a way, like trapped in this like hell, like world.
I know.
It just,
But no one's punishing him. That's his own
Yeah.
mind, you know.
and
It's
then
not an easy one, I know.
no.
And then?
Kind of a practical question
Yes.
too, just about like with yellow jackets,
What's the yellow jacket?
like they're like bees, but they don't die when they bite you.
Oh, it's a bee. Okay, and it bites you. Try again. Go. Take it a bit louder, softer, I think. A bit softer. You're going, dull.
So yellow jackets.
Use the mic. Can we turn her mic on? Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
A bit lower, the whole thing, though, lower. Yeah, go on, lower.
So when people like set up the things to trap the yellow jackets to kill them so that they
Oh,
don't.
what happens? What?
Well, there's these things that people hang up like in playgrounds and things around children because yellow jackets otherwise will attack like children in swarms and bite them, and they can send people to the hospital and things.
Okay.
So when is it okay to protect other people by like killing
Sure.
insects? Or
I know, I understand. Well, like this, what we're just talking about here, you know, looking at it fairly simply in an example of that ant, the karma that a person creates, meaning the seed they plant in their mind when they do an action of killing or any action, is determined mainly by the motivation. So in the case of the ant, as I gave the example of Mary, it's a very simple example, right? Mary has compassion in her heart, but the crucial point is, whom does she have compassion for? The ant. That's what makes that for her not a very negative action, because her heart was feeling open to the ant. You understand my point here? That's simple. Now, when it comes to situations like this, you know, comes a situation of killing the yellow jackets, or, killing the Iraqis, or killing your enemies, or whatever, the commonest thing we say in the world is, you know, well, those people are bombing my people, so I better bomb them back, and so therefore we say it's okay. But the Buddhist point is that's not enough. You've got to look into the mind of the person doing the killing. Now, if all the people who go to war against the Iraqis to supposedly stop them from harming Americans, whatever the reason is, but people in war in Iraq, you've got each of those people killing those Iraqis. Have to look at Buddhist view. The only time that their action of killing is really virtuous is if they have huge compassion for the people they're killing, like that ant. So to have compassion for this group of people, which then usually, and then in the case of wars, it causes to have anger for that group, which is why we go then kill them, that's not virtuous. That's not virtuous at all. I'm just talking generally here, okay? That is not virtue. The point is, what a virtuous action is determined by isn't something external, is what actually is in the mind at the time of doing the action for the person you're doing it to. Are you hearing the point I'm making? So you could say that the time, you know, ideally, okay, I'm talking, and there's still other variations, you know, we have to look carefully. The Buddhist view is, in general, just to kill one sentient being because it harms another is not a valid reason to kill. Which doesn't mean you sit back and think, oh, well, I better let the yellow jackets kill all the children. That's not the point. But there are other methods, maybe, is all I'm saying here, of getting rid of yellow jackets. There are other methods of getting rid of the ants and the mice and the roaches and the rats and in your house. Don't just assume, because it harms my house, it's okay to kill it. No, the reason you're killing the yellow jackets, the reason you're killing the rats and everything, it's sort of because you're defending your own stuff and you're defending your children, but the real one is you have aversion for those yellow jackets. How dare those yellow jackets hurt my children? Stop. Are you hearing my point? Of course you are. So we've got to look very carefully at why we do things. And then if we do want to protect our children, of course we must find other means to help get rid of the yellow jackets. Not to kill them. Just because it's creatures and because we think it's okay to kill creatures, that's the easy option most people take. Oh, okay, kill them, you know. There are other methods of getting rid of them. Do you see? Use what methods we can. The main thing, the Buddhist view, is not, again, not a moralistic one. We've got to, our own mind is the point here. We've got to have all the time the most pure motivation in our mind for doing whatever we do, because that's what creates virtuous karma for oneself. And if we really think this way, and you have a very strong wish not to kill, you will find other methods to protect people. The only reason we automatically kill so many things in the West is because, and I'm sorry to say this, most religions say it's okay, and it's our Christian culture. I was taught as a Catholic that God made creatures for our benefit, and we can do what we like with them. They don't have souls. That's why we all kill so easily, and that's why we always have killing as the first option. But when you have a view not to kill, when you've made a vow not to kill, suddenly you try and find 24 more reasons, 24 other methods that you can use to protect people, to prevent things happening. And I think it's surprising how easily we'll find other methods too. You see what I'm saying? So it needs thinking about very carefully. Someone else? About karma?
I have an 88-year-old mother who wishes she would die. That's all I hear from her.
Yes.
You know, her mind is good, her body is kind of falling apart. Well, I get so tired of it, hearing it.
I know, darling.
It's depressing.
Yes, it is, yes.
And finally I decided the other day, well, maybe I should just pray for her to die. Would that be the compassionate thing to do?
No.
I mean, this isn't a joke.
I know it isn't, darling. I know.
It's like,
but it's no, because, okay, what's happening in her mind? Obviously, she's completely depressed.
yeah.
You know, 88 is not fun. I agree. I mean, this is the point about this rotting old body, you know. It gets a bit older and wrinkled, and suddenly all the things that were fun are no longer fun. You don't have any energy anymore. Food is boring. Sex is boring. Everything's boring. All the stuff that actually we got excited about in life suddenly is not so exciting. So the thing is, the karma will ripen. She will die at some point, and it's probably sooner than later. She's 88. So the practice for you, obviously the big practice for you, is to know how to help her, right? That's what you're talking about. Well, then maybe the way to help her, and this is the big practice for you, is to just tell her that she's wonderful, that you love her, that her life is worthwhile, that she is so precious, and don't worry, Mum, death will come when it's ready. Meanwhile, make the most of your precious life, and you've got this wonderful mind, and just keep saying good, positive, constructive, wonderful, loving things to her, because at the moment she's thinking, I'm a creep, I'm no good, I'm hopeless, I can't stand it, no one loves me. Total self-pity, total self-pity. Just your practice is to give her the exact opposite, and that just even, you know, practice saying these things for her. That's what she needs to hear.
I could say it to her.
Well, darling, that's your practice. Yeah. That's your practice, maybe. That's the part that's tough for you.
I don't think I can do that.
Well, why not, though? Because you don't love her. You think she's horrible. You wish she would die, frankly.
Probably.
I mean, being blunt.
Yeah.
I understand, darling. Yeah. I mean, join the human race. Yeah. We're all the same, you know. We're all really got a low threshold. You know, we're all like this. I agree. I understand, sweetie. It's very honest. You should talk about this. But, you know, if you think for your mind, what is best? Okay, what's best for your mind? What will help? So what best for your mind means, what will help you develop your qualities? What's best for your mind, do you think?
Probably to learn how to talk to her in that manner, because maybe that's what she's asking for. And it's...
exactly.
We're not close.
No, exactly. I understand so well. I do understand. Really.
It's like it feels phony and
forced. I understand, darling. But we have to fake it till we make it. When you first hop on that bike as a little girl, it was completely phony, darling. You couldn't ride a bike, but if you didn't keep doing it, you'd never continue. You understand my point? It's all fake it till you make it. So saying those, I mean, it's obvious. Whether she's 88 or 28, those kinds of words are an obvious sign that a person is completely fed up, completely thinks they're a creep, probably totally, it's all self-pity, but we're all join the club, it's all self-pity. That's how we are. The delusions are like that. So, you know, not to be patronising to her, but it is true that her mind is valuable. It is true that her life is worthwhile. It is true that she can be doing some good with her life. They're facts. So you're not lying. The part for you is because it doesn't come from a spontaneous sense of affection. So from your point of view, I would suggest, I mean, not pushing, of course, that's an amazing practice for you. And it just might even benefit your mother. And I mean, how often do you see her? Are you living with her? Or you see her once a week?
She lives in Texas. I don't see her very often at all.
And you hear this because she rings you, or you hear this?
She calls me.
Okay.
And it's just, you know, I feel like somebody sucks me in the gut every time she calls.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I'm still alive. I pray
No, I
God
know.
take me. You know,
I
she's
know,
a
I
good
understand.
Southern Baptist. you
I
know.
understand.
So-
I understand. Well, you know, it's like how often do you talk to her? No, just for a sec, let's just look at it. How often do you talk to her?
Every couple of weeks,
For how long?
till she hangs up.
But for how long, roughly?
Usually, because she's really hard of hearing, so about a half an hour, because she doesn't
Okay.
hear anything I say.
I know.
So,
I understand.
so I just
Well, maybe
listen.
what you should do. Okay, so every couple of weeks for half an hour. So it's like, you know, it's like you got to go to the dentist. You got to decide in advance it's going to happen. You, in your mind, you give her this 30 minutes. Don't resist, because the resisting is part of the suffering for you.
Yeah.
In your mind, you decide, okay, 30 minutes is going to be mum's. And I'm going to be there for her 100%. This is an amazing practice for me. So you accept this, totally accept. And then you say what you can, you know. She probably won't hear you, but a little bit will filter in. And then, but maybe you can do, and this might sound strange, is you write her a letter, you send her a gift, and you thank her for all her kindness as a mother. And you can just, and you say this, and she'll have that piece of paper, and she doesn't have to hear it, she will see it loud and clear. Your life is worthwhile. I am so grateful to you. Everything you've done in your life for me. Thank you. I mean, really dredge this up out of you.
Yeah, I think I did it kind of once, and
There you
then
go.
told her it was okay if she wanted to die, because it was.
I know.
I didn't know what
I know.
to. I just.
I know. The
Yeah,
point
I know.
is, why we say we want to die is because we can't see any value in life.
Yeah.
So the fact is, there is still something she could do if she could see it, you know, by even just having a happy mind. So try to say really positive things to her. Send her a gift, write her a letter, and then and don't encourage her to die. There's no benefit. I mean, she's just saying that because she just has to say something, you know, and she just goes on about it. It's like, you know, it's okay. And I mean, we're talking two things. You benefiting her, but this particular bit of practice for you, and that would be marvellous. Because I think, you know, you don't want to regret. When she's dead, you don't want to regret anything you didn't do that you could have done. And you
Right.
don't want to regret anything that you did do that you wish you hadn't done. So make it as positive as possible. You'll be so grateful for yourself. You'll be so happy that you did this. And there could even be some benefit to her, you know. And meanwhile, let her keep saying what she has to say and be brave enough to know that it's hers and you've given her this 30 minutes. It's yours, Mum, in your mind. Say what you want. But for your sake, I think, do something really positive like that, you know.
Okay.
Because
thank you.
she is your mother. She did bring you up. She didn't abort you. She did give you a life. She did help you get educated. I mean, the fact is, aside from all her delusions and her dramas, you know, the fact is that's true. She did. So thank her for all this, because she probably has forgotten all the things, you know. And most people don't thank their old 80-year-old grandmoms. Some do. It's really important we do that, actually.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Two people over here. Go, darling.
Hi, Venerable Robina.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your enthusiasm. No, I really mean that. And that's my question is, what is the karmic cause of your enthusiasm?
Okay, we can talk about that. All right, we'll talk. Not forget about mine. We'll talk about that.
In general, yeah.
Okay, in general, let's go on about this other one. Is that, sweetie, you got questions on this one? Good. What? I forget your name, darling. Leanne. Okay, give it to Leanne. Then we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll finish up with that one. Yes, Leanne.
I too want to say that, you know, your enthusiasm is wonderful. That's why I enjoy coming to hear you. But there was one, I wanted to say one other thing too,
Yes.
was that, you know, some of us ask questions that other people are just thinking. And, you know, I really appreciate this lady on the end
Yes.
and this other lady that just spoke, because, I mean, we all want an answer to these
That's right.
I
I know.
and you know,
Well,
we
your
think
question
about
too.
it all the time.
And your question too on Friday night, Leanne, too. Same.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess this is more of a practical question than like the lady bringing up the yellow jackets. I was wondering if someone has prepared maybe like a Buddhist website or a book to tell us how to deal with our habitual situation of, okay, the ants in the kitchen, it's infesting the kitchen, we don't want to kill it.
No, I
but-
hear you. Or options, you mean?
Right.
I think there should be. I wonder if there is. Does anybody know? I think it'd be a great thing.
And because I heard you talk last year about termites in a house and how someone, you know, dealt with that. And so I just was wondering, you know, because if you have moths, and and you're trying to grow vegetables. Here we go,
Yes.
and you try to avert them, like
Yes.
co-planting or
Yes,
something like that.
exactly.
I understand those kind of things.
Yes.
But when you get things infesting in your house, or you want for lack of a better word, a humane way
Sure.
of dealing with it, and other people are like, no, we're killing the ants in the house, and
No, I
we got to
know,
do.
exactly.
So I'm trying to
I know.
figure out what to
Yes,
do,
I
because
know.
I live on an organic farm,
Right.
horse place, but there are infestations, and we don't take care of them in, we try to, avert things, but we
Yes,
have
I know.
mice and this kind of thing.
I
So
understand.
I'm just wondering where you get your information on how to deal with these things, or do you just, most places you go, you don't have to worry about it?
No, I understand. I don't know if there's such a thing. Does anyone know? Where? Tell us.
AskTheLlama.com.
What's that? Who?
It's Tashi Gelson, he's Geshe,
Uh-huh.
and he's now in Arizona, but he's, I know.
Give her the mic, please.
consults with-
Can you go over to the mic here, darling?
Tell us how to spell this.
Ask a llama.
What? So you mean you have to ask the
.com.
question, then he'll give you the answer? There's
Yeah,
nothing. but
and
it's not
he's
as if
just there as a consultant. If you have a question, he said, any question, he said, you can.
yeah, but it's not as if it's something published with all these alternatives.
No. But it is a resource for a teacher to, if you need to ask and you don't have anyone to ask, that he'd be there to ask a question.
But he wouldn't know about the practical things in the West about how you do this and how you do that. He
He's
wouldn't
been
know
living
that.
in the West since 2001.
Yeah, I know, but that's fine. But I think that's one point. That's
Anyway,
one.
that's a
one.
small resource.
That is, it's true. But does anyone know if there is something already published or various ways to deal with it? Because I think it's a really crucial one. Yeah.
Maybe, and
But do you know if
asking-
there's anything published, Betty?
I
That's
don't.
I'm asking here.
I do not.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I know that they're compiling information, advice from Lama Zopa Rinpoche about how to take care of it, how to do things for animals, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this comes into it as well. Yeah.
I always feel touch and go as gold plus.
What?
You know, like you learn when you don't want to kill.
No, just hang on a sec. Wait, you just give me another alternative. There might be a bunch. So what I'm getting at is what is there published. I don't know if there is something, but you could go to fpmt.org and check it out, because there's advice about animals and Lama Zopa. Maybe put in Lama Zopa and animals, and there could be something on there, Leanne. Because I know that this has come up over the years so many times. But I mean, maybe there is something. Just look on the web and start investigating. I wouldn't be surprised, actually. Because I know there are so many approaches now, so many things that people do, to prevent from harming.
Pioneers is a good forum.
What is-
The Bioneers.
Who?
They're like biological pioneers, and it's a group of actually people in all different disciplines globally that are actually pushing for sustainability and introducing things in the scientific community all the way.
But are they talking about not harming creatures? I
Right.
doubt it. Are
Right.
they?
Mm-hmm.
Not harming creatures.
Yeah,
That doesn't
not as
come in-
strongly as what you're directly asking for.
Well, this is the point.
But no, I realize that.
To find methods to stop. Yeah, of course you realise. Yeah. It's okay, but that's interesting. Another resource. I'd check on fpmt.org. Really, I'd look into that one. And then maybe if you don't have an answer, there must be a way to email and ask your question. Ask, because I know there's a lot of they've got a lot of resources that maybe they can find something about that from some teachings or something, and give you. Yeah, this is really important. So, next, who's got a question? Here, darling, go.
Since the last time I heard you speak, I learned about the non-killing. I work in the woods for the water company, and there was one opportunity of a snake that I heard, and someone was dispatched a tag to destroy it. It was a rattlesnake in a pit where we need to go down and read the meter. And I stepped forward and I said, no, give me a bucket and some tongs and I'll take care of it. It was like anarchy, in the office, because all these males were like, how could you, it was a really, primordial kind of thing.
Yes.
And I said, well, just because, it has the
right.
ability to kill doesn't mean we need to go kill.
Precisely.
So, I was scared, but the action proved to save her life. Our boss made a couple calls, and he found
There
a
you go.
resource They saved her. She happened to be pregnant,
Amazing.
and they let her out about a half mile away,
There
which
you
was
go.
really awesome.
So we get, it's gone.
Oh, but then a few weeks later, I had the opportunity of stepping over a very big rattlesnake. And I looked down, and it looked up at me. He could have got me in the crotch. No way. I mean, it was very big. And then I was like airborne for like 15 feet. But I wondered, was the karma specifically for that little girl rattlesnake, or was it for all rattlesnakes?
What do you mean, the karma?
Well, being kind to one snake.
Creates a cause for one to be kind to you, you mean?
Yeah.
No,
or-
okay.
Or is
All
it
right.
individual?
No, I hear what you're saying.
Or
Well,
species?
technically, the way karma works is that most of the things in our mind in this life, the tendencies, and all of the tendencies, sorry, and most of the things that happen to us in this life are from seeds in the past life. So you could say, one, you had certain karma with that particular snake. It created the cause to have you there that wanted to save its life. That's due to the karma of that snake, that its killing karma didn't ripen. It had some good karma that ripened there, that you were there. So you have this karmic connection with that snake that caused you to then save it, and then all the other people did their thing. The second one, then you meet another snake, you've got different karma with that snake. So you could say, in that case, there was no karma for this snake to harm you. You can sort of see they're both related, because you could say this, that it's so, okay, that your past one of consciously not harming that last one and wanting to help it actually activated another karmic seed, which was the one you had with this other one, that was also planted in the past for it not to harm you. So it's sort of like the seeds of the tree are planted 44 lives ago, but the pruning you do makes a big impact. So the actions we do now are like affecting the ripening of other seeds, but the ripening was from, the seeds were from the past. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Thank you.
So in other words, another way to say it is, you could, let's say you might have a lot of lying karma from the past, for people to lie to you. And then suddenly you start lying, and then all of a sudden the lying karma from the past starts to ripen. So the lying now activated those past seeds which were also planted in the past. The being lied to wasn't the direct result of your lying now, but that lying now activated those past lying seeds. Are you seeing what I'm saying? That you can start being kind now, or start, let's say you decide, I'm never going to kill again. Then that non-killing can ripen all sorts of other good things, that the seeds of which were also planted in the past. They activate each other. You see my point? Yeah, like fertilizer, exactly. Exactly. Someone else? That's it? Questions? Okay. Go, sweetie pie, yeah.
So, you know, I guess I'm finding it difficult to, you know, we have so many medicines that are produced because they have to use animals as guinea pigs.
That's right.
To test on surgery. A lot of my own
That's
sister
right.
is a physician. She works in research. And if you said to her, you know, that killing is bad, she would just be horrified.
Of course she would. I know
because
that.
she believes
Exactly. That's right.
that she's doing
That's
this
right.
work to
That's
save
right.
human lives.
That's right, exactly.
And she's recently been working on this stem cell research.
Right.
And I'm kind of very, I don't really know
Okay, so let's just say...
what the right thing is.
No, I know. So let's just say... So what they're doing is, let's say, how do they use these... Give an example of how they use animals. What
Well,
do
the
they do
main
to test
animals they use are actually monkeys.
What do they do to these monkeys?
Well,
They
I
do
know
quite- basically
they
they do
inject them. They do inject. I mean, I don't
And
know if
often
anybody knows.
And often
but,
in experiments they harm these creatures, don't they?
they harm them. Well, they
That-
inject them to see if
Certain
the
diseases.
animal will be
Right.
cured of a particular
Okay,
disease.
so let me ask a question. Let's imagine you ask this question of your sister. Well, why don't you use babies to do this? I mean, much closer. They're much closer to being human. Babies are human beings. Why don't you use babies to do experiments on? Because then you'll really get a direct answer to whether it's benefiting. What would she say?
If I told you, you'd be shocked.
No, tell me what she'd say. It's okay.
I think the medical profession believes that in order to find cures, you do anything at your means.
So, but why don't they
But
use
they
babies?
don't use it because they can't.
Why? But what?
Not allowed.
But if they could, they would use babies. Would they?
Well,
human beings.
I don't
they'd
know.
experiment
I
on
don't-
human beings.
I've never asked her that. I don't know.
But no, I mean, people were so shocked with Hitler because he did this, didn't he?
Yeah.
So the reason we don't use humans to do these kinds of experiments is because we think humans have souls and we don't want to harm them, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Well, the
Oh,
Buddha
yeah.
would say, this is why we do it in the West, because, excuse me, with respect, all the teachings, including the Muslim teachings and the Christian teachings, would tell us they don't have souls and they don't suffer.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the reason. So, of course, they say they're going to do this because it's benefiting, of course. But the extent to which you benefit something is all, if it's based upon harming something else, then, I mean, it just makes no sense. The reason they wouldn't use a human to do this because they'd realise the human would suffer and they wouldn't want to cause suffering. But so once they establish that monkeys suffer and ants suffer and mice suffer, which is what a Buddhist would say, then of course you wouldn't even think to use them. So we've got to first look at our assumptions. They've got to look at their assumptions first.
Well, it's like the discussion we had on Friday and about, mental pills like serotonin. I mean, I don't know if anybody in this room has any idea how they come up with these things. I mean, the experiments that they actually have to do to come up with these medications, I mean, they're horrific. But, nobody ever talks about them. It's never
That's
on
right.
TV.
No, of
Nobody
course.
ever publishes
No.
anything about it.
That's right. That's right.
The medical profession are very kind of closed
Sure.
up about it.
Right.
Because they
Sure.
want to, they give the information to the drug companies,
right.
they produce the drugs, and then we're talking big money. But I don't know, I'm kind of, like with that Christopher Reeve guy, he was hoping that stem cell
That's right.
research would come up with
So
some
tell me
cure.
about stem cell. Tell me exactly what they're doing. What are they using with this stem cell research? What are they using?
Well, basically, I'm not too technical on it, but from what I understand, it's embryos that are being discarded.
Okay, so they're using embryos. That's the
Yes,
point. You need
they
an
are.
embryo to get stem
They
cells.
use embryos to
So
get
let me ask a
cells.
question. Can you get stem cells without embryos?
No.
The umbilical cord
okay,
of a born
okay,
baby.
you can get it from there.
Okay, so what is
But,
the
but
hope?
it's not.
If,
But it
okay.
can be. It's not easy. It can be very
So
dangerous.
if the research were given the go-ahead, what that means is people are going to be producing millions of embryos, right? To be used so they can get stem cells. Is that correct?
That's not what they're actually talking about.
What do they want then?
They want to be able to. Okay, this is the big picture from what I understand. They want to be able to clone some of these embryo. We can.
That's what I'm
clone
saying. They want to
cells.
make embryos. That's what I'm saying. They want a
to-
farm
right,
of embryos.
right. They want to farm it, and then they
embryos.
Want to,
Wait,
farm,
please, wait.
Farm the
They
embryos.
want lots of embryos, don't they? Don't they? That's the point. That's how you get stem cells, right?
Yeah.
So what an embryo is, in Buddha's terms, is an egg and a sperm that have come together into which a consciousness has entered. It wouldn't be an embryo if it weren't. So it's called a sentient being. It's called a human being. So from the Buddhist point of view, it's really simple. That's like mass murder, It's just insane. The Buddhists just wouldn't do it. It's very simple. If it's an embryo, it's a sentient being. It's got a consciousness there.
Yeah.
It's a sentient being. So that's the Buddhist approach.
I guess I'm just kind of confused.
So
from
if you got a
how
question,
do you
darling.
how do you save lives,
Sweetheart,
if you can't
listen.
do this?
That it's bullshit, excuse me, with respect. The only reason we say that is because we don't think that these creatures have a soul, as we call it. Therefore, we think it's okay to use. But excuse me, over thousands of years, the Tibetan medical system. You don't. I mean, to use the herbal type medicine, which is what's gone on for thousands of years. You don't need to experiment on anybody. You don't have to harm anyone. It's kind of the irony of the Western world that we make these strange things that are based on harming others. It's just bizarre, But it's not logical that you have to harm others, because it's only because of all these laws in the West you've got to experiment and prove this and prove that. So this is because of the crazy laws in the West, and they're based on these assumptions that. They bring in the animals because we don't think that they suffer. You don't have to harm an animal to get it. I mean, you do in the system we've got now. That's not the only way to benefit sentient beings. Like we think the only way to benefit America is by bombing Iraq. It's just a logic in people's minds. We've got to stop all the enemies. We've got to bomb them, This doesn't follow. It doesn't follow. We've got to look at our assumptions. That's the point. We've got to go more deep and look at our assumptions. Then we'll come up with the right answers. Well, well then, you know, it's like, it just doesn't work, you know. It's a bizarre concept. So I can, you know, I'm going to save my baby. I've got 4 babies and I can kill you and save my 4 babies. I'm sorry, it's not an option. It is not an option of morality. To harm one person to save 3 is not an option. It's a bizarre option. To farm millions of embryos so we can have stem cells, so other people in the future who don't even exist yet cannot have a disease. Okay, the Buddhist approach to stopping sickness is practice morality. I mean, okay, there's no time, at, you know, 1 hour to go to talk about this, but we're discussing it until now. The Buddhist rule, the Buddhist view of karma is why we have sickness is due to past harming. So to stop the harming in the future, to stop people getting sicknesses, you practice morality. It's a much simpler practice. Because by harming one lot of creatures, what you're doing is for future lives, you're creating the cause to be even more harmed. So you're seeming to be using one harmful way in a short term to help one thing, but you're creating more monsters for the future. So it's just not an option from the Buddhist point of view. It's just not an option.
One other thing, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing that you said, I just wanted to be clear. You said
Yeah.
that the researchers who are doing research on animals, for instance, if they really realized that they were causing suffering to those animals, you don't think they would continue
Well,
to do
that's just
it?
a thought. I mean, isn't the commonest teaching in the West, which is the Christian teachings and the other religious teachings, is that animals don't suffer. The scientific findings, based on the assumption of mind being a brain, based on not being a big brain, we say they don't suffer. It's just chemical, you know, just electrical reactions. They don't suffer, we say, and they don't have a soul. We say that, isn't it? In general, would you not say? Isn't that the view in the West?
I'd say it varies.
Well, okay, it varies, but in general, why we have harmed those beings, why we use those beings, is because we don't think, I mean, you know, okay, a monkey looks more like a human, so it feels a bit closer to suffering. But, you know, I remember even, I mean, all the stuff that Peter does, right? Those people, who is it? Ethical treatment of animals, that lot. I mean, I remember a while ago on Fox television, I saw one of the PETA guys being interviewed by one of those heavy-duty guys who were the interviewers, and he was just completely cynical to this PETA guy. He smashed him down because this guy's daring to say that there's evidence to show that fish suffer when you catch them. Now, I mean, excuse me, from the Buddhist point of view, that goes without saying. Like a big discovery, so intelligent. But because the world, and this Fox guy was just completely scathing. Like, you idiot person, you stupid idiot person to say that fish suffer. So, I mean, it's a common view in the West. And as for saying an ant suffers, people would be hysterical. I don't think even Peter even worries about ants. Fish about the lowest you can get, you know. Ants suffering, not possible. So I think it's a very strong view in the West, which is why we mass murder animals, and I'm not being emotional here about it. I think every action a person does, every action a culture does, is based on a certain assumptions. And obviously we harm fish and harm rats and cull kangaroos and cull the rabbits, as we call it, you know, because we don't think it matters. We don't think it matters to the person who does it, and we don't think it hurts the creature. So we have to look at our assumptions. This is the Buddhist view. And the fundamental Buddhist view, they're sentient beings, they're living beings who have experience, who don't want suffering and do want happiness. And so for this reason, one of the Buddhist views would be don't kill, don't harm any living being. Any living being. It's sort of I mean, it needs thinking about, but that's, you seeing what I'm saying? I mean,
I see what you're saying.
So your point, say more. Give him the mic, please.
Actually, I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. I just, the idea that, I'm not sure I agree with the idea that the generalization that the researchers that are doing research on animals would stop doing it if they understood that the animals were suffering because of it. And in fact,
tell me why.
In fact, many of them may understand that animals are suffering because of it, but what
Yes.
their feeling is that in the aggregate they're doing
Yes.
a benefit for society,
Right.
a greater good.
Okay, so this is where the Buddhist view of karma comes in, which is not something we factor into the West, of course. The Buddhist view of karma would be this, that any action, like I'm saying today, any action we do necessarily leaves an imprint in my mind, any action I do. So if I observe, if I'm, say, harming rabbits, let's say in my experiments, doing this and doing that and cutting off their thing, whatever they do in experiments. And the rabbit is really suffering. And I use thousands of rabbits probably and millions of worms. I mean, I remember one guy who talked to me how he's killed billions of worms in his experiments, right? So then the Buddhist view would be every single one of those actions is killing a sentient being. That sentient being doesn't want to be harmed, therefore I'm harming that sentient being. Secondly, because I'm not realizing it suffers, that's extra strong because I have this incredible ignorance and I'm not noticing it suffering. So I am creating in my own mind unbelievable seeds of negativity that for me will ripen as incredible suffering in the future. So forget even harming another. The point that Buddha's making is this: if I were to understand that, then I have to deduce that I don't mind suffering, because in future I will suffer unbearably for the harm that I'm doing to others. So it's sort of like saying, well, I'm going to eat poison because in the end it's going to benefit someone. I mean, I don't think so. We don't eat poison because we know it will harm us. So even forget about whether we harm another. The fundamental rule of morality in Buddhism is that the actions we do bring impact upon us. So that's the first point to ask us all to look at. And I think if everybody had the view of cause and effect, which is that whatever I do impacts upon me, nobody would ever harm another being, ever. If we had that view, I think, if we thought about that one. Because that one, nobody accepts. No, in the West, we don't have a view of consequences. Certainly, if the general view is that it's okay to kill a creature because it hasn't got a soul, which is where our teaching is coming from, then it's not called a sin to kill a rabbit. So then people will, even if it does suffer, I agree, people will continue to harm it. But if everybody realised that the killing of rabbits harm themselves, everybody would stop, because no one wants suffering. So that's the point, the fundamental point to really think about. Okay, one mightn't have the view of karma. I'm just giving you the Buddhist view here, you know. You see my point? Yeah. Yeah.
Robina, I work in vitro fertilization. I'm a nurse. And the consents that the women sign that gives the right for research is worded, these embryos are non-viable. They would not survive. The ones they feel would survive are either put in the mom or frozen to be used later into the mom. And the wording in the consent is non-viable.
Non-viable.
Yeah.
So, see, that again is meaningless in Buddhist terms. The fact, I mean, of course it's non-viable. I mean, if I didn't eat food, I'm not viable, I'll die. Everything's interdependent, right? So whether it's a little fetus that's a month old or whether it's a fully grown human, none of us is viable unless we have certain conditions that will support our life, in this case called food. Well, in the embryo's case, called blood and a womb to survive in. I don't know, whatever. So it's not being viable in and of itself is not a reason to kill it in Buddhist terms. That's one point. The second point is in Buddhist terms, if it is called an embryo, that means a consciousness is there, which means it's a human being. That's it, simple. Viable or not, who cares? It's a sentient being. So the fact, again, you see, this is where I think the more we look at the assumptions we have in our culture, in our medical system, then obviously it determines the actions we do. So the Buddhist point of view would be, if you had that view, we would never even think of having embryos. We would never even think of using animals. It wouldn't arise in your life as an option. The only reason it arises for example, this one with embryos, is because there's no agreement in the West about what a being is, what a human is. When is it a human? When is it not? Is it got this? Is it got that? So because the West has the view that it's only physical, because it's not viable is enough for the West to think it's not a real person. You see my point? If it's a Christian, you say there is a soul there. If you're a Buddhist, you say it's a sentient being, because by definition, an egg and sperm staying together, even for more than a few seconds, and the cells developing, depends upon the existence of a consciousness. The egg and sperms can't develop even more than one step if there's not a consciousness there. That's the Buddhist view, that consciousness is the life that causes the egg and sperm, which are just a bunch of matter, to turn into more than an egg and sperm. So by definition, it's a consciousness. Therefore, it's a sentient being. And in this case, it's a human being. So it's very simple in Buddhist terms. You see my point? I mean, we need, and this is why I think in the West there'll never be agreement on the stem cell thing. There'll never be agreement about abortion until we have agreement on what a human being is and when it starts being a human being. And there'll never be this because everyone has different views. And in the West it's so confusing. The materialist view is so confusing because there's no certainty. And even many of the materialists also believe in the soul, and many don't. So there's never going to be agreement, it seems to me, until we start looking at, you know, well, until there's agreement. I don't know. It's easy. It's difficult, isn't it? What else, people? At 11:30? I didn't give you a break this morning. I'm sorry.
Quick question.
Yes.
In enlightened self-interest, is there any distinction or separation between doing something strictly out of compassion or doing it because you understand you're sowing the seeds for your...
Oh, absolutely. That's the wisdom wing. That's the wisdom motivation. You've got two,
right.
now the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. So you could say, like I think we're mentioning this, there are two, if you really look at it, the bottom line would be there's two reasons to do anything. One is the in self-interest, but the purest self-interest, the best, most common self-interest. In other words, for that researcher, if they analyse, you know, if they, let's say they started listening to Buddha's view and they thought about cause and effect, and they'd realise that harming those creatures is going to harm them unbearably, that's enlightened self-interest, that's practical self-interest. There's no way you'd want to harm another being because it's going to bring you the results. Then you'd, if you have the greater view based on that one, you'd see such suffering that you would no way want to harm that being for its sake. But we've got to start with the first one. You see, that's really clear. So Buddhism puts a big deal on this, as you nicely call it, enlightened self-interest. Because initially we can get all holy and think, oh, that's just a bit selfish. What's the big, you know, the bigger, the greater big? We've got to have the first one first. We've got to have the view of karma first for our own benefit, you know.
Yeah, because in my business I see a lot of do-gooders that are so addicted to the doing good that
that's right.
They're scary. I mean,
I understand.
They're frightening people.
No, exactly, I understand. Exactly. Exactly. No, exactly. And we can see with this that that's probably the compassion without wisdom. Because wisdom, it's an interesting word, wisdom. It sounds a bit sort of holy, you know. But the wisdom wing, as we've been talking, is the work you do on getting rid of your own junk, your own fears, your own neuroses, your own attachment, your own manipulation, your own jealousy, your own pride. So the two consequences of working on the wisdom wing, one is your own happiness, your own contentment, your own fulfillment. But two is enough common sense to see what the hell's going on past your own nose. And you need that to help others, isn't it? Yeah. Sure thing. Over here, please.
I have a question about, we're talking about the mice and the monkeys who are being harmed. Since they have suffered to help other sentient beings, are they now enabled for a better rebirth? Has that been changed for them?
I understand. Well, let's, again, you know, the karma that a sentient being creates from its own side is based upon what's happening in its mind. So if that little mouse is sitting here thinking, well, I'm going to sacrifice my life for all these humans who want to get better, you know, but I'm happy. I mean, I'm joking, but not joking. Then you can say there's a very powerful motivation and intention in the mouse's mind, but probably it's not like that. The poor little mouse is sitting there completely freaking out in this incredible, if whatever level of suffering it's got, with no comprehension of what it is, little ignorant mind freaking out. So you could say that there's some karmic consequence for the mouse, that because its life has been used and maybe some benefit might come to another person because of it, then that's some impact for that mouse. It's true, but it's certainly not coming from the mouse's intention, you know. But yeah, there'd be something there, for sure.
Thank you.
Go for it. No, good. It's good. Go. Take the mic. Hang on a sec, sweetie. Take the mic. Yeah.
Okay, so taking that mouse and turning that mouse into the researcher understands that by doing these acts, you know, they're building up a lot of negative karma, but they're doing it anyway, with the understanding of that, because of their compassion for the people that they're going to help.
I don't think anybody would do that. You'd have, okay, if you did that, you'd be a highly evolved being. If you would sit there and actually suffer, if you sit there, it's like the analogy would be that, you know, you're going to eat poison because you're going to benefit another. You've got to be a pretty highly developed person to do that, to have direct suffering to yourself.
Well, and people do sacrifice themselves for others.
I don't think, yes, like I'm saying, but I don't think that's the motivation of most people who are researchers. I'm sorry, with respect to researchers, because there's no recognition in this life that there's anything negative about harming a rabbit, is my point. We don't think we're doing anything negative.
Well, see, that was sort of the silly part of it. There probably aren't researchers out there doing it because of that, or with that understanding.
I doubt that there are any.
But I did want to understand what your response to them.
I think if a person is prepared to take on the suffering themselves of something for the good of another, that's a highly evolved, very compassionate, extraordinary person, in which case, fantastic. But I mean, of course, extraordinary to do that. Yeah. But then that person, I think, would have such compassion for the rabbits. They would say, don't use the rabbits for experiments, use me. That's what that person would do. They wouldn't use the rabbits because they would be happy with the suffering for themselves, but they'd never want to harm those rabbits. The compassion would be unbearable for the rabbits.
Yeah, but if by using themselves they don't sort of amplify their knowledge and education to be able to benefit others.
No, but when you're really compassionate, you don't think like that. When you're really compassionate, you'd give your life for an ant.
But isn't that the wisdom part?
No, that's compassion when it's real like this. You couldn't care less because you can get 1 million normal bodies anyway. Who cares, you know? Not attached to this stupid old body when you've got compassion. There's so many stories of the great bodhisattvas, like, you know, giving one of the previous lives of the Buddha when he saw the mummy tiger eating her babies. He had such compassion for the mummy tiger, creating the negativity of eating her children. He gave his own body to that tiger. He didn't think, oh, well, I'm a holy being, I don't want to waste my resources, you know, here, I benefit others. That's no way. You can get 1,000 more bodies anyway, you know. Real compassion is real compassion, you know, and we don't have anything like that in our world. It's totally beyond I.
I guess you can get 1,000 more bodies, but can you get 1,000 more people with that wisdom?
Yes, if you've got that wisdom, of course you can. You can multiply it wherever you want. The lowest level bodhisattva can manifest their mind in 100 forms simultaneously, consciously. Real compassion, though, is real compassion. There's one, I heard about some old monk in Dharamsala who's got some, creature living in his nose and is eating it away. He doesn't take it out. He doesn't want to harm a creature, one tiny creature. Compassion, I have to say from what I've read and what I've heard about among all the Buddhist bodhisattvas, it's like St. Francis, that level of compassion, incredible compassion for any living being, which is not normal in our Western world. Nothing like it, you know. The best we can do with compassion is, you hurt my friend, I have compassion for my friend, but to that extent I hate you and I'll smash you to pieces. That's the level we have of compassion in our life. I'm sorry, look at the wars. Look at the way we misuse creatures. Look at how we harm each other. It's a level of compassion that's based on attachment. And it's not even compassion, actually. It's self-serving. This is interesting about karma, you know. They say one of the consequences of the habit of doing something. So let's say from past life you've killed, you get a human life this life because of your virtuous karma, but you've still got this residual result of your past killing and you've got the tendency to kill. Well, one of the tragedies of the tendency to do negative things is it blinds you from seeing the harm you do. So that's one point. And the other one is because you have the tendency, it attracts you like a magnet to do that action. And then you've built up this conceptual story that calls the action good. And all of this is what blinds you from seeing the harm. So a friend of mine whose son was a fisherman, from the time she could remember, from the time he met the water, he just fell in love with fishing. He attracted like a magnet to fishing. He spent his life as a professional fisherman. She said she always found it unbearable, but you can't say much. So she went with her son one time fishing. And she said she found it unbearable. Because why? Because what she saw was sentient beings flapping in the boat, showing obviously they didn't want to be there. They wanted to be in the water. So they were suffering. Her heart reached out to the suffering fish. Her dear boy, who was a kind man, a good human being, for 13 years, for 27 of his 29 years, or whatever, 25 of his 29 years, he spent his life killing fish. He adored the job. He was addicted to it. He was completely, in other words, attached to it, meaning he had the habit to kill from past life. He was born into a situation where he could kill. He met all the conditions. And what's interesting too, the hundreds of thousands of fish that he killed all ran to his hook, to his nets, because they had the karma to be killed by him. So he was called a professional fisherman. He was called a successful fisherman. But you know what? All those years he went fishing, he never saw suffering, because he had the habit. And when you've got the habit to do something, you go towards it like a magnet. And you check, what you go towards like a magnet is what you call pleasure, what you call good. It gives you pleasure. That's why you keep doing it. It gives you pleasure. If every time he killed a fish he got an electric shock, no way he'd go fishing. He went fishing because he had the habit. Because he had the habit, he was attracted like a magnet to do the thing. What you're attracted like a magnet to do is the thing that gives you pleasure. So, you know, when it comes to pleasant things like chocolate cake, we have no problem. Nice, you know, nice handsome body, we have no problem. Killing fish even, we have no problem. But, you know, like poor old, like serial killers, I always think of Jeffrey Dahmer, that guy years ago, you know, who tortured and harmed and killed first creatures. And he said in a film I saw about him, since he was a tiny boy, he was attracted like a magnet to torturing and killing creatures. Now, of course, he didn't know why. His mummy didn't teach him. He knew it was wrong. He had an intelligent mind. He was a good man. But this very strong habit to torture and kill. And then, of course, he graduated to humans, which is when he got into trouble. So, of course, we call him a monster, born from hell, evil, kill him and all the rest, fear and hysteria. But all it was, he had the residual result of past killing, no doubt from being an animal. Check your next animal movie and see what monsters they are, these poor creatures, what they do to each other. They're like in this hell realm of torture and being tortured, alive. They're monstrous, poor animals, what they do to each other. So clearly he had these karmic imprints. He gets born a human, and up his imprints, the moment he starts meeting creatures, he's compelled. And why? You check it out. Basically, because he got his orgasms from it, very simply speaking. Pleasure means, you know, you get pleasure from doing something because it gives you a good feeling. A good feeling when it's really intense is what we call that, you know. And so he couldn't stop, because one of the ways karma ripens also is in this powerful attraction to do the thing again. So when we talk about free will, it's kind of like a joke in Buddhist terms. Don't be ridiculous, free will. Check the last time you sat down very rationally and said, well, will I be angry or will I be patient? Well, I think I'll be angry this time. I mean, what a joke, you know. You're there reeling from it. Oh my God, I was angry again. You didn't choose it. You didn't have free will. You were propelled by the force of your past karma from the habit of doing it to do it again. And then, of course, you can't sustain it if it's a naughty thing, so you have to call it good. So my gangster friends, my Mexican gangster friends in prison, they have the karma to kill. They're born into a certain scenario called, you know, Los Angeles, born into the gang. You know, the best thing is to kill your enemy. You know, in the prisons, we spend their lives having their wars. Killing their enemies. Best is kill, you know. You rape the girls, you kill the boys. So they have a tendency to kill. So, of course, you call it good. They've almost got a, you know, you read the gangster's rule book, it's like set in stone that harming your enemy is good. So, of course, you have to call it good. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. And eventually, as you get older, the goodness in you starts to question it. So you have to then look at your philosophy. The same with the person who stops killing. Poor old Jeffrey Dahmer, though, because the habit was so powerful from past. It was like he had no choice. Like a junkie, you know, like addicted to something. Whatever it is, you're addicted to it because you've done it often enough. So you go to it like a magnet. This is the tragedy. So, and that's why that fisherman could not see suffering. He was blinded by his own attachment, his own needs, his own ignorance. He couldn't see suffering. His mother went once, all she could see was suffering. This is the tragedy. So all the people, so in the West, we have it as our view. It's in the bones of, it's in the foundation of our philosophy in the West, which is the Christian one. Not being rude now, just looking at its history, you know. Creatures don't have a soul. Creatures don't have brains. Therefore, they don't suffer, because our assumptions, Buddha would argue and say that they're mistaken. So as long as your foundation is mistaken, whatever's built on it is faulty, and it keeps creating more dilemmas and more monsters, which is how come we have all, you know, the machinery keeping people alive and all this stuff, these dilemmas we've created for ourselves, you know, because of our fundamental assumptions, Buddha would say, are mistaken. And then seeing how karma works, how we are just born with the tendencies that we have practiced in the past, and then that causes us to go to have the yearning for it, and then to meet the conditions that will help it ripen. So that fisherman, believe me, he wouldn't have kept fishing if he didn't get fish. If no fish came, you know. I went fishing once to impress a boyfriend. He was pulling out the fish, I couldn't get one. I even had the intention, but I didn't have karma to kill, you know. And crucially, there were no fish that had the karma to be killed by me. So you could argue that all those, you know, all the people who go and test animals and harm animals and fish animals and kill the wolves and, I mean, whatever you kill, bears and things, not being personal here, we get born as the creatures who get tortured. The tortured creatures of this life are the torturers of the past life. It just keeps going around. So when we understand this cause and effect, who in their right mind will want to kill a fish? Come on. Forget about whether the fish suffers. Just for yourself alone, if we could see the consequences to our actions, you know, we'd use a lot of common sense. But I mean, the Western culture of science is so huge and massive now and built on these things, it's very hard to change it, you know. To deconstruct the whole system, the whole world would collapse. The economy would collapse. So we can see. Samsara, you know. So all we can do is change ourselves. Look at our own tendencies, you know. Take responsibility. But the crucial one is understanding cause and effect. This is the fundamental one. The reason to have compassion for most sentient beings is because there's ignorance of cause and effect. This is what Buddha would say. Forget about ignorance of inherent existence. That's even subtler. Ignorance of cause and effect. The tragedy that each human, forget about animals, don't realise there are consequences to ourselves of the actions we do. We just don't get that. That's the tragedy. So all the things we do to harm others, even having wars, because we say it's compassion. See you later. It's not compassion to harm a sentient being. It's very simple. It's how come the Dalai Lama hasn't had a war the last 45 years. Take note, please. They don't use, you know, Tibetan medicine doesn't use creatures for the greater good of humanity. It's such a cop-out, you know. It's just nonsense. It's not true. There's so many ways to benefit sentient beings, and harming others is not a method. It's very simple. So clearly, we have to think about it. It is not a view that's current in the world. We really have to think about it. So and also, again, the Buddhist approach would be, you want to have no sickness in the next generation? Well, let's look at, this is so simple. This is the scientific view that Buddha takes. Okay, we have to look at what is the cause of sickness. What is the cause of sickness? Buddha would say it is negative actions. Sickness is one of the karmic results of past killing and harming. Very simple. Sickness, whatever you want to call it, whether it's called cancer, whether it's called Parkinson's, whether it's called all these things that we say we haven't found a cure for. Sickness is the karmic result for those sentient beings of their past killing. So a person who is sick, or a person who is a medical person who wants to help sickness, you know, if you go to your Tibetan doctor, they will give you physical medicine, but they will also give you a holistic. They will say best is practice morality, don't harm others, take your medicine, and then you'll get better, this life and next. It's very simple to stop sickness. It's very simple. But again, the Western view is based on the assumption that it's physical. It's based on the assumption that the mind is physical. It's based on the view that sickness, no one knows why it comes, and we keep trying to find new medicines. And so what we do is we keep harming others to find new medicines and creating new sicknesses. Not to mention creating the cause to become rats and monkeys ourselves, you know. So it's like, in Buddhist terms, it's like a farce. The Western approach is like a tragic farce, you know. It's very simple to stop sickness. Practice morality. Very simple. So simple, it's a joke. It doesn't cost a cent. Don't need a, you know, laboratory to do that. You just need a human mind, you know. And then you recommend that to others. Very simple. So clearly it sounds simple. I'm just quoting what Buddha says. It's up to us to think about it and then make a decision whether we live according to it or not. That's our choice. We're the boss. Sure, Joan. Take the mic, sweetheart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is not related to little animals and things. Now, I realise with great clarity now that what we think or say or do is definitely going to affect our future karma. But what about what we think and say about others? Like referring to my daughter's health again, I tend to obsess about it because it is serious. Am I making it worse by telling people about it? Or
no, that's got nothing to do with it, Joan.
Nothing. It's
That's
just
not, darling, what you do is what has impact upon your mind, not on your daughter's mind.
I see.
Nothing to do with it, darling.
Thank you.
Okay, go.
So I hope this doesn't come across silly.
It's okay, you can be silly.
If God forbid, or the universe forbid, if the Dalai Lama got sick and needed to be treated in the hospital, would his advisors, would he go to the hospital?
Sure, why not? Of course. He goes to hospital all the time.
So, you know, and have surgery.
Or he's probably not had surgery, no. But anyway, what's the point?
Well, I'm still kind of perplexed
Yes.
about the idea that, you know, a lot of human beings have spent they've used their mind and their so-called intellect to help other human beings.
That's right.
And so, again, going back to that research idea of what they're attempting to do. And I just wondered if the Dalai Lama would perhaps, you know, would he take pills? Would he take something to help him? You know, if he has a really bad headache, if he has a migraine, does he just, he doesn't take anything?
No, sure, you know, forget about the Dalai Lama, I can't speak for him, but, you know, Buddhists would take a pill, yeah. Sure, I've taken headache pills. Then, what's the point?
Well, I guess my point is those pills wouldn't be here if these people hadn't done the work that they did.
That's right.
So are we doing wrong by using...
Well, you can, whether it's the same argument about eating meat, you know. But then, the bigger picture is this. The Buddha would say the very nature of this universe is suffering. That no matter what we do, by our very existence, we harm others. Just by existing, you harm others. Walking out, you know, they say, for example, Buddhists would say there's not an atom of space where you won't find sentient beings. Somebody told me recently, Lama, she said, just by doing this, you harm many sentient beings. By driving, by picking vegetables, by walking, by breathing, you harm sentient beings, miniature ones, big ones. So that by our very existence, we harm others. So, given that, the crucial practice is to develop the intention to not harm. You can't avoid harming. It's by existing, you harm. So, at least we have to kind of get our way out of samsara, beginning with the intention not to harm, which is why the very basic level of practice in Buddhism is to vow for the rest of your life, I will never kill, meaning intend, because I will kill all the time. But intend to kill. I will never kill, never lie, never steal. You take your basic vows of vowing to not harm. So that intention is what gradually finds you out of the maya, life after life, you know, to stop suffering and stop having to suffer. So given that whatever we do causes suffering, then okay, best not to eat meat because it's fairly direct, those animals suffered. But at the same time, excuse me, don't think so wholly, and you're not discussing, I'm just talking, that all the countless sentient beings that died when you picked the carrots. And you look at organic farming. People actually, in organic farming, again, this is the basic mistake in the West, you know, you bring in this creature to eat this creature so you can have nice organic carrots. That is monstrous in Buddhist terms. So we're harming beings all the time. The crucial one is to have the pure intention to never harm. And then to do your best to do actions that don't directly harm. So if you found out, you know, if you're about to eat some, you know, you order some fish and they tell you they've got to go off and kill the fish, you'd say no immediately. But if the fish is in the fridge already, you might say yes, you know, because it's dead already. So the pill is there, but if at this moment, you know, you got the option to get a pill, but they've got to go experiment on the mouse first, you'd say no, please. So it's like you can't stop harming. So given that it's the nature of the universe, this is the tragedy. So at least, as I said, at least we can do is intend to not harm and do is direct. If you haven't in other words, if you meet a living being, don't harm it. course beings have harmed for those pills, and they've harmed for the vegetables as well. What can we do, you know? So you make your choices best you can, given that. Yeah. So really from this is interesting, you know, the Buddhist one, the bottom line for our life, the basic practice, you know, the basic one. Forget even about compassion yet. Forget about going out and being noble and benefiting others. The first one, the wisdom wing, is just, and the fundamental one, first and foremost, groundwork, the grade, you know, junior school of practice. You watch your body and you watch your speech. Meaning, as they say, when you're with others, watch your behavior. Meaning, don't harm them. That's it. That's what it means. Don't harm them. At least this. But the reason at this point isn't compassion. The reason to not harm others is because that is what will harm you in the future. This is one we don't think of at all. It's a hard one to get our head around. But this is the fundamental one of cause and effect. So if we analyse it a bit more, you know, because when you're on your own, they say, then you look at your mind. First, you watch your behaviour. First, you know, junior school practice, just back off, you know. Be careful with your body and your speech. At least you refrain then from harming others. Then, when you're on your own, you can begin to look more deeply at the source of all of this, which is your mind. And then you begin to look into what we've been talking about, what karma is and how it functions, and what is morality and what is it not, and motivation, the role that it plays, so on and so forth, all the factors. Exactly understand deeply what is morality and how do you create it, you know. All of this, really get our heads around it very precisely. And then to begin to work on the delusions themselves. Because why we even in the first place harm with our body and speech is because of what is in the mind. And the reason in the mind for why we harm others is called delusions, is called this egocentric attachment and anger and all those things. The bottom line is attachment. Because it's you know, I harm you because I'm not getting what I want. You know, I use my mouth to harm others and I use my body to harm others. So at first, stop doing this. And the reason is cause and effect. The law of the universe, Buddha says, that whatever any sentient being says or does or thinks necessarily leaves a seed in that consciousness's mind that necessarily ripens in the future as the experiences of that sentient being. So this very first level of appreciating cause and effect, in our ordinary life, we totally understand. This is what determines the choices we make when we eat food. I will eat that food because it will make me healthy, but I won't eat that food because it won't make me healthy. It'll cause me suffering, you know, make me fat or something. So we completely understand cause and effect in relation to oneself. We don't sit there and think I won't eat sugar because it might harm others. How ridiculous. We won't eat sugar if we really understand the effect. Let's say it messes us up. We just won't eat it because we don't want the suffering. That's what cause and effect is. It's so simple. So all Buddha's saying is it's not just food that causes you suffering, it's what you put into your mind that causes you suffering or causes you happiness. So this fundamental appreciation that your words and your thoughts and your physical actions is like what you put into you, which will produce the future you, just like the food, but it produces your future mind. And that negative actions will cause you future suffering, that positive actions will cause you future happiness. So what's a negative action? A negative action is one that's motivated by delusion. And usually, therefore, a negative action is therefore one that will harm another. So that's a good criterion. The criterion is you don't do what will harm another. So you don't kill, you don't lie, you don't steal. When we look more deeply, as we just did before, into why is it negative, we will see why. It's very simple. Beings don't like being killed. Just do market research. Check them out. The rabbits, the monkeys, the ants, the humans. They don't want to be harmed. But then when we look into analysing what it is that makes my action negative, it's my delusions. That's my motivation. My motivation is aversion. How dare that ant be on my kitchen sink? So general statement, don't kill. Why? Beings don't like it. Look more deeply. Why? What is a negative action? What defines it is the motivation, is the aversion. And in this case, it's aversion. How dare you be on my kitchen sink? So I harm it. That's what causes it to be negative. So finally, the reason not to harm others is because it's like eating poison food. You will suffer, babe. Do you want to suffer? No. So there's not one. If anyone could understand that they're harming others, will harm them, they will instantly stop. Instantly. There wouldn't be a medical system. They'd all collapse if they all became Buddhist. So this is the fundamental one. Forget about all the grand ones of talk of compassion. You know, that's high stuff. Because anyway, you check this out. Genuine compassion is based on understanding karma. So it's like this. When we've begun to do junior school and high school and got our heads around karma, cause and effect, consequences to oneself of one's own actions, which then demands that we start changing our actions for our own sake. Like with your food, you've got to have compassion for yourself. You've got to want to have, as he put it, this other man, enlightened self-interest. It's excellent. Perfect. You've got to have this first. You've got to have compassion for yourself first. So it's one, you do have to not want suffering. One, first point, I do not want suffering. Then you have to ask yourself what causes it. And then you realise it's your own negative actions that cause you suffering. So obviously the conclusion is I must stop doing them. It's very simple. One, I don't want suffering. What causes it? Eating sugar. Conclusion, stop eating sugar. It's such logic. So you've got to first say, I don't want suffering, which is like compassion for yourself. And then you've got to realise why you're suffering. There are two causes of your suffering, past karma, present delusions. So the conclusion, I don't want to suffer further, I have to change. I stop creating negative karma. And I purify my old imprints. That's it, that's practice. That's simple. Then you can say you've got what they call renunciation. And now you're qualified to go to the compassion wing. And what's the compassion wing? One, you see others. They don't want suffering. Your heart goes out. You realise they don't want suffering either. You understand that because you realise you don't want suffering. So you understand now. You can see it. But two, now you have to ask, why are they suffering? Well, you know what? They're suffering for the same reason as you. Their past karma and their present delusions. So that is the basis of genuine compassion. Compassion, just to see someone suffering, that's not enough. That's not really compassion. Because, you know, we have other reasons why they're suffering. Oh, well, I have compassion for all the Americans. What is the cause of their suffering? You know, Osama bin Laden. Okay, conclusion, bomb Osama bin Laden. That's the logic in the world. Look at the world. We can deduce from the world's behaviour what the world's philosophy is. So once we've got the Buddhist view, one, we see suffering. We see the people being harmed, called Americans. But being, you know, their buildings being blown down or something. So, okay, you have the view of karma that is due to their past actions. And then you see the people who do it. Osama bin Laden's boys, you know. And you have compassion for them too, even more. Because you realise that the people who just got bombed have just finished their karma. So you have compassion because you realise out of their ignorance they didn't realise it was due to their past actions. They thought it was someone else who caused their suffering. But you have compassion for this reason. And then you see the bombers and you have compassion for them because they have just begun their suffering. So you have compassion for the victims and the oppressors. And when you've got compassion for the victims and the oppressors, you're on the right track of compassion according to Buddha. And it's based on the view of karma. That's why the Dalai Lama doesn't drop bombs. That's why he's not angry. That's why they don't harm sentient beings. This is the type of thinking. This is the logic. So we have to think about it, because it's very different from our usual views. Don't just believe it, think about it. So again, reminding that, you know, the consequences of the different ways karma ripens are four. There's the karma that ripens at the time of our death, which causes us to have a certain type of life. In our case, morality. Got a human life, won the lottery. And second, the tendencies we have, all the habits, the tendencies. And so this is where we have to look really, really carefully. Because the tendencies we have based on past practice are what will drive us to keep making those very choices. And if they're negative, like I said, then we will go to it like a magnet, and of course we will think it's good. So we have to step back. with using Buddha's view of morality as our basis, and then assess our own mind, assess our tendencies, and then we have to begin to make choices. Because we have a tendency, which means we're locked into that tendency. We identify with that as being me, which causes us to meet certain conditions, which causes us to keep doing it. So we keep calling it good. So you've got the tendency to kill, you meet the fish. You're going to meet the rabbits. You're going to meet other people who go fishing. You're going to go through the jobs, and you'll notice the one that says slaughterhouse, and you'll suddenly go for it. You'll be born in a situation where you have to work in the slaughterhouse. It's due to karma, due to your tendencies. So our life kind of karma takes care, as Lama Yeshe says. It puts us into a very situation. So unless we step back and look freshly based on the fundamental view of morality, not harming others, we will never really get some space, you know. We've got to look freshly based on this. We've got to have a practical view. Morality, don't harm others, don't lie, don't kill, don't steal. Then we've got to look at our tendencies, you know, and then look at our situation. And then we can make choices. Because if we follow our tendencies, which is what we all do, then we will never, ever escape samsara. Because it sets us up. It's like a trap, you know. Due to killing in the past, you have a tendency to kill. It looks good to you. You meet the sentient beings who need killing because they created the cause to be killed. You'll keep killing. It'll feel good to you. Other people will tell you it's good, especially if it's fishing, you know, fishing and shooting other things. You know, if it's you know, killing poodles, you're going to be in big trouble. You know, you get put in jail for that. Isn't it? No one agrees with killing poodles. But killing fish, it's cool, you know. So be careful which ones you choose. So, you know, it's like you set yourself up, you get that situation, and you keep doing it. And if the world supports it, you'll definitely keep doing it. So we've got to really step back and look freshly. What is morality? What is harming? What is not harming? Why is it this? Not just because Buddha said. There's some logic to it, you know. And that's the type of thinking we have to do. Then we have some real ground. And then we can begin to change our tendencies, and that's the painful part. And again, remember, one of the worst consequences of the habit to do something is, when it's a negative one, is that it makes you feel good. This is why we find it extremely hard to change. That's why we find it hard to change. Forget about whether you kill. Just look at your old habits of depression, your old habits of jealousy, your old habits of attachment. It makes us feel good, ironically. Although we don't, you know, it's actually suffering. But we run to it like a magnet. And then we start supporting it, building up a story around it, defending ourselves, you know, not being cruel about us. So we really have to have a lot of intelligence to look so carefully. So understanding the fundamental idea of morality, first of all, don't harm others with your body and speech. Then go to high school and look more deeply into your mind and understand what delusions are. A delusion or a negative state of mind is one that is motivated by self, motivated by ego grasping. It blinds you from seeing other things. And it's distinguished from the virtuous states of mind. So we have to do this enormous amount of inner work, being our own therapist, as Lama Yeshe says, to distinguish between the positive and the negative. But again, understanding technically what is a negative state of mind, what is a positive state of mind. The negative ones have two characteristics. One is they're delusional, they're liars, they're deception, they're mistakes, they're not accurate assessments, and two, they're disturbing, they're painful to me. The virtuous states of mind necessarily aren't deluded and aren't disturbing. They're spacious, they're connected, they're appropriate, and they feel good in an appropriate way. So, you know, we have to distinguish between these two. And then remembering, when you create karma, the main determining factor is your motivation. So if you want to ask yourself, is it a good thing to do this? You check, two things. Will it help me develop my qualities? If the answer is yes, then you do it. Will it help me benefit others? Even more so. Then if the answer is yes, then you do it. They're the two main reasons to use for anything you choose on this earth, whether it's to go to the movies, have a cup of tea, go to sleep, you know, whatever. Will it help me? If the answer is no, it won't help me increase my qualities. If the answer is yes, it will help me increase attachment or anger or pride or jealousy or depression, then excuse me, don't do it. That's simple. Because motivation is the determining factor, not the action itself. The way the logic ego uses is, if it feels good, it must be good. We're like children, you know. But look how it leads us up garden paths. Lots of people heard Hitler. They thought he was great. They felt really good. Look where he led them, you know. You could even think, you go to the Dalai Lama's teachings, he makes you feel very good. It's not good enough. It's not a good enough reason to go to his teachings, I'm sorry. It's sentimental, it's emotional. Because the logic would be you go to other lamas teaching who's boring and picks his nose and can't speak proper English, you'll be bored as to tears and you won't go. Because it's a baby reason to go. Okay, better than nothing, because it happens to be he is a valid person. But you've got to check up on that and make sure he's a valid person. Then whether he makes you feel good or not is not the reason you go. You go to Lama Zopa's teaching, you keep you up till 3 in the morning. You won't feel good at all. So if you use feeling good as a reason to even do your spiritual practice, you're in big trouble again. Whereas if you use the logic that this is beneficial and will help me improve my qualities, then even if you're up till 3 in the morning and tired, you won't mind because you know it's beneficial. So your motivation, your reason for doing something is so fundamental. We've got to sort that out, Then we'll progress. So if something increases your delusions, it's the opposite to Dharma. If something lessens your delusions, then it is Dharma. So if living in that relationship with that creepy person helps you lessen your attachment, you're in a good place. You think being in a relationship, you feel all happy and lovely, oh, it must be good. Excuse me, you're just probably being codependent, or we say, totally attachment, fulfilling each other's neuroses, that's not good. Better go live with an enemy, make you miserable, at least you're purifying karma. Really, if you're really being brave enough, bodhisattvas would rather live with an enemy than a friend. Much rather, So we've got to really look at what we're trying to do. Then look at our motivation. But there are some actions we do that don't need any good motivation at all. And that's any actions in relation to what they call very potent objects. Object in the sense of it's being an object of your action. So, for example, like your own spiritual teacher or like a Dharma center, things are very potent from the point of view of there being objects and things that support developing the mind, very powerful. From their side, so much power that any action you do in relation to, let's say, something like this place, which helps people's minds, even without a good motivation, it's cool. Because they say the power of the object is so strong. And that needs thinking about. But normal actions, we need, to check our motivation and put it in the right direction. Because that determines the quality of the action, not the action itself. So you could argue that a person in the kitchen now doing the dinner, which is called mundane, cooking, cutting veggies, if they could have a very pure bodhicitta motivation, really pure altruistic motivation. They want to truly benefit others. They're happy to be cooking lunch so people can be in here listening to the Dharma, even if they don't hear it. That's bodhicitta. That makes that action that person does, the cooking action, actually a cause for enlightenment. Some of us can be in here because of complete attachment. That person in the kitchen, far more powerful morality than the person sitting in here doing something that looks spiritual, called hearing teachings. But if the motivation is attachment, then it's useless. It's a negative action. So an action we do isn't determined by the thing itself. It's determined by the motivation. So on that note, let's finish. Perhaps it's lunchtime, isn't it? Nearly. What an interesting morning. So we think, we've been listening to this stuff, food for thought. Whatever seeds have gone in, may we nourish those seeds. May we think about what we've heard. May we try to make sense of it. 1% of it even is fantastic, Don't be emotional about it. Don't be hysterical about it. Don't be extreme about it. Try to think it through, just like you'd think through your mathematics. Think it through to understand it. Because understanding it and processing it is the point. So may we do this. Each one of us, may it take us one step further in the development of our own amazing potential, so we can be of benefit to all sentient beings. There's a little prayers on that piece of paper there, if you've got them. No, yes, the last two there. Kewadinyo dudag lama sange drugyurne drowa chikyang malupa dei sala gopasho Jang chod sem chogrin poche ma ke panam ke gyuchig ke panyam pa me payang gong ne gong du pelvasho. So dedicating like Lama Zopa does thinking that this action of listening to the teachings, which is completely empty from its own side, may it create the cause, which is empty from its own side, for me, who is empty from its own side, to become enlightened, which is empty from its own side, for the sake of all sentient beings who are empty from their own side. And may all the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa Sutra and Tantra flourish and grow. And, yes. Okay. The meaning of this is that we're offering, it's sort of like it's considered to be like you're offering something to thank. So as if we had the Buddha here himself giving these teachings, we're offering all the precious things of the world, symbolized by this funny looking 9-pin thing. Meant to be all the things of the universe there, that we're offering as if it were to the Buddha to kind of thank for the teachings. Shuk shing me tog tram ri rabling ji ni je gen pa di sangye jing du mig te ulwagi dro kun nam dag jing la che pa sho. Say chan he come. Next song? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Ang drag pe, drag pe sang suang sing. Going inside Negyurchi Idam Guru Rashna Mandala Kam Niyatayami.